It's Big 12 Radio, off and rolling on a majorly Reaction Monday show. We are powered by Modelo, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. So great you joined us today, James. Happy to have you with us. Back in studio after you missed out on all the fun and festivities on Saturday. More on that in a moment. Big 12 Radio with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. We are loaded up today. You know, some days you wake up and you're like, what are we going to talk about? And that's not today. There's so much to react to. We've got a so-so basketball weekend in the Big 12, volleyball and soccer, a new coach for Iowa State, a new athletic director for Baylor. We've got the new Iowa State coach, Jimmy Rogers, his mentor and former boss, the legendary South Dakota State former coach, John Stiegelmeier, joins us coming up in 40 minutes in the show. That is going to be a very fun interview to get us a good sense of who Jimmy Rogers, the new Iowa State head football coach is. Plus, the bowl system is broken. It is broken and unfixable, James. We'll get into that coming up. But as of this weekend, the CFP is set. Texas Tech, congratulations to the Texas Tech Red Raiders, winners of the Big 12 for the first time ever in program history, James. And there was simply no doubt about who the best team in the Big 12 was all season long. It was Texas Tech. They had the one slip up to Arizona State, but other than that, they were flawless all season.
Yeah, no, I think you could make the case that after Saturday, that game was more about Texas Tech than it was BYU, which certainly wasn't the case going in. But I think the way Texas Tech dominated, it answered a lot of questions that maybe the national media and the narrative surrounding just how good they are, those questions were answered. When you watch Ohio State lose to Indiana later in the day, you watch the ACC championship go into overtime, you watch Georgia club Alabama in the SEC championship. This game, Texas Tech's dominance and just how elite they are in terms of their talent, how well balanced they are, all three phases was on full display on Saturday. You crushed the pregame show.
Thank you.
I watched the full 2 hours, didn't miss a second here on Big 12 Studios, and listened on Big 12 Radio here on TuneIn.
It's good because I quizzed you. I actually set you a full quiz at some point, and you passed.
What did I say 67 minutes and 38 seconds into the program? Love the beard scratch to kind of give me a little hello, like
Gave you a couple
warm,
of those.
silent hug, so I appreciate that.
How jealous were you, be honest, of Taylor McHargue?
Super jealous, obviously. I mean, you guys are on the field. You guys are hanging out with Kalani Sitake, who's basically a top 5 best friend of mine. And you guys are doing it with no notes, no laptop, no prep in hand, just all dome. You looked like a preacher giving a sermon about how to break a third down zone defense. It was impressive.
You know, look, there are surgeons, heart surgeons, there are rocket scientists, there are mathematicians, there are doctors and scientists that don't have it as difficult as I did on
And
Saturday.
then there is Artie Timken.
I mean, I'm not one to lift myself up for the incredible work that I do.
No.
You know, I mean, it's not digging ditches, but we dug a really big ditch on Saturday. To be asked to do a pregame show for 2 hours without a computer, without having to stand. I was in cowboy boots for 2 hours. Those are not easy to stand in.
This man was in cowboy boots.
I don't know what award I should be getting, but give me all of the awards. I mean, again, not trying to pat myself on the back here, but let me just pat myself on the back.
I mean, you had the only hard drive that mattered, and it was all upstairs. All brain, 2 hours. You guys did a fantastic job.
I mean, they were trying to ask me, of all people, to not have notes in front of me to host a 2-hour show?
Notes. Please, I could do this show in my sleep.
I mean, you're a TV guy. You know, you're supposed to just look pretty, stand up there for like 5 minutes while you do a report in front of the field, and like that's it. We hosted a 2-hour talk show standing up in front of the field. Eat your heart out, TV guys. So you stand up there for two hours without notes, no monitor. Was it the Nobel Peace Prize? Is that what I deserve?
I mean, you didn't have a monitor?
No.
Just you.
Yeah.
You and the people.
Yeah.
2 hours.
I don't want to compare myself to Gandhi, but
pure organic takes.
If you want to call me Sports Gandhi moving forward, I don't think that would be inappropriate.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a stretch.
Great job. You guys did a really good job. It looked really good. All the things were good. And now what? You're going to be able to take in Texas Tech's college football playoff game? Like, you don't follow Texas Tech. Texas Tech follows you.
Yeah, this is a great point, and so I'm glad we're doing this on the air too. So I've had plans to go to Florida for Christmas and New Year's. My parents are going to be down there in the greater Miami area. We'll call it Delray Beach. Don't want to get too specific.
Delray Beach, Jupiter.
But so that was always the plan, and when things started to take shape, it's like, oh no, there's a chance that Texas Tech's going to be back at the Cotton Bowl, and I'm going to be in Florida. And yeah, to your point, Indiana's win. So Scotty Rogers, our friend from the Cotton Bowl, explained this to Taylor and I on the field before the game, basically saying like Texas Tech needed to bump Indiana and become like the third highest rated conference champion or third highest rated team.
Sure.
That won the conference championship. And as it was, Indiana gets the win. So if Ohio State would have won, it would have been Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas Tech 3, Indiana 4. And in that case, Texas Tech would have gotten the Cotton Bowl. But the way that it works, and because the ACC did not have a representative, it was always going to be the Orange Bowl was going to be Texas Tech if Indiana would have won, and Ohio State gets the Cotton Bowl. So basically, like that was how it was explained to us, that the Cotton Bowl would not get the highest rated conference champion. It would get, in that case, the ACC would supersede the Cotton Bowl.
Got it.
It sounds kind of clunky and confusing, but it made a ton of sense to me. So much so that I was actually watching the Big Ten championship game at Cosm. I spent basically my whole weekend at Cosm. We'll get into that coming up. But I was there yesterday for Bears-Packers. I was there on Saturday for the Big Ten championship, and there were a ton of Texas Tech fans. And it's funny because most of them were rooting for Indiana. And I said to one of them after the game, they're all excited. Indiana won. And as I'm walking out, I'm like, you realize that now this means the Tech is not going to get the Cotton Bowl. That instead Tech is going to get the Orange Bowl. And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah. They're like, well, we'll see. I was like, okay, you'll see. So as it works out, my plan has been incredible because I was set to fly back to Dallas on January 2nd the whole time. So this makes it perfect. It's a 40-minute drive. Hard Rock Stadium is a 40-minute drive from where I'm staying. So I'll be out. I'll be able to go out to the Orange Bowl and cover that. But I was going to ask you, so what's your availability before we get this whole thing rolling so we can do a show from the field before the Orange Bowl?
Before the Orange Bowl?
I mean, what's your availability to do this? I figured we could do this off air, but why not let's just do it on the air?
What is the date?
I can January 1st.
January 1st.
I can guilt you into like maybe thinking you're going to have a conversation with Lacey about how you're not going to be with her on New Year's, unless you don't have the kids. You guys can fly to Miami and make it happen.
Okay, so we're doing this on the air. Here's the deal. I have a basketball game on January 3rd.
Oh, that's 2 days later.
Which is Arizona and Utah.
You got to be there for the
means
first?
I would have to be there on the 2nd. So if the game's
Perfect.
on the 1st,
I'm also flying home the 2nd.
I could go from Miami to either Tucson or Salt Lake City.
But that means you're going to have a really difficult conversation with your wife.
The wife piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're taking us here, Big 12 Radio. Correct me if I'm wrong. We are taking between Christmas and New Year's off. Is that right?
Correct.
A little vacation.
But now we might have to do something. I'm just kidding. No, we're taking it off, yeah.
I mean, so we're going to have – there's going to be a lot of holiday family stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Might be able to make this happen.
Wow.
It's a hard maybe. Okay? It's a hard maybe, guys.
It is a very firm –
I cannot commit right now on the spot. It's a very firm maybe.
All right. I love it. I love the firm maybe. We'll have to bring it up to the bosses. I'm already going to be there, so it wouldn't even cost them a dime to send me, other than I might now write off the entire trip.
Right. Yeah, they just have to pay for me. Oh, yeah, totally right. The whole trip. I mean, tax season 2026 is going to be huge.
Huge. So, yeah. So the Orange Bowl, I mean, like, ultimately, when I look at this weekend, there's two big takeaways, obviously. There's the game itself with Texas Tech getting its first ever Big 12 championship, but a game that really resembled the first matchup. I thought, I mean, when you look back, and you texted this to me basically, something about that. Like, what was it? We figured they wouldn't have 3 turnovers again, and BYU had 4. We figured they'd have a better rushing attack, and they had less rushing yardage as a team than they did in the first matchup. So, I mean, BYU tested Texas Tech in the first half, but, I mean, in the first drive, BYU looked perfect James, and then 34 unanswered following that. It was like the opening drive was scripted really well for BYU, and then after that, I mean, Texas Tech just stressed BYU in many ways that they just couldn't overcome.
Yeah, and I think, the opening drive was the best drive of the game for BYU. They had, I think, 90 of their 200 yards or close to on that opening series, and BYU had chances. They got off the field on a 4th and 2 in the red zone area. I thought, it was 13-7 at that point. That was a major potential turning point, but BYU turned the ball right back over. They couldn't turn it into points. Had they, maybe it's a little bit different story. But, Texas Tech, their display in the trenches is what stood out to me. Their physicality at the line of scrimmage. They just dominated defensively. I continue to believe they are the best defensive team in the country. I think Ohio State might have something to say about that. Even though they lost, they held a very explosive Indiana offense to less than 20 points. But, Texas Tech is one of the best defenses we've seen in the last 3, 4, 5 seasons. And teams that win national championships are teams that lean on their defense. I'm starting to believe they have the formula to make some noise in this college football playoff field. And I know that we'll talk more about this later, but to have 2 group of 5s in the college football playoff, no disrespect to James Madison and Tulane, but something's broken. Would we be sitting here today complaining about the field if it was still 4 teams, and the 4 teams were Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech? Because I think there's a pretty clear discrepancy between those 4 teams that got the byes and everybody else in the field. To have 2 group of 5 teams to be arguing about Alabama, Notre Dame getting snubbed, and BYU getting snubbed, it pushed that debate of who's the 5th team in to the college football playoff, or the 4th team. Is it team 4, 5, or 6? Now we're arguing about teams that are 9, 10, 11, when we should be looking at the fact that we've got a James Madison and a Tulane in this field, in this 12-team college football playoff field, and the top 4 seeds are pretty much settled.
Yeah, but it is kind of funny. You have to laugh.
It's very funny.
Look, at the end of the day, I think we could all agree that Notre Dame should be in this field over James Madison, and it's super funny that they're not. And, they couldn't be over James Madison because of the way that the college football playoff criteria was written, and the idea of, certainly it would never happen that any of the group of 5 programs would usurp any of the power programs. So if you have 5 automatic bids, certainly the top 4 conferences are still going to be the top 4 conferences, right? And yet 2 years in a row, James, 2 years in a row now, that has not been the case. Last year, a group of 5 champion was higher ranked than another power conference champion. And we have 2 now this year because of the ridiculously, large conferences that in the ACC includes 2 from the San Francisco area, the Atlantic Coast Conference, as absurd as that is.
Yes.
And because they have, these engorged conferences with crazy tiebreaker rules that don't make any sense, you get into a situation where, because Duke wins the ACC championship, that allows James Madison as a higher-ranked conference champion to get in. It makes no sense, and yet it makes all the sense in the world. And it's why, in my opinion, you shouldn't ever have automatic bids. Mm-hmm. I get the comfort of knowing that these conferences, if they win their conference, they get in. But anytime you write the language to be that ambiguous, it's going to happen. And you shouldn't earmark any specific spots, because then you'd probably have a situation in which Tulane is in, Notre Dame is in, and James Madison is not. But alas, this is what we get. And if James Madison were to pull a crazy upset, we'll see them at the Orange Bowl instead of Oregon.
Well, and just remember, if we eliminated the automatic bids to conference champions, for the group of 5, Boise State still would have been in the field last year. They were still a top 12 team. Right. They were a 7 or 8 seed in the college football playoff. So there still would have been, and there still is a path that a group of 5 school can still make the field, despite not getting that group of 5 automatic bid. But the Notre Dame stuff is just hilarious. Like the ultimate take your ball and go home after a pickup basketball game. They're like a little kid that mom puts dinner on the table, and the kid says, I don't want to eat that. She says, well, that's all we're having. And so they say, well, I'm not going to eat then. Like the college football playoff committee, You go to a coffee shop, they said, well, we're out of regular milk, but we have oat milk. And they say, well, just cancel my whole order then. I'm not going to play in a bowl game. For them to do that, I thought was telling about that whole situation.
And we spent the whole year arguing about BYU or Notre Dame, especially at the end of the year. And so we had an opportunity to see them play in a Pop-Tarts Bowl, which would have been fantastic, except that Notre Dame has reportedly declined the invite. And we'll get into the broken bowl system coming up because, it's not in a great place and doesn't seem to be a track for it to get back on track. Let me ask you this. You mentioned kind of at the top there that you thought BYU got snubbed. Did BYU get snubbed?
Man, that's a really good question.
Because the narrative is, Alabama wasn't punished for playing in a conference championship game and getting hosed, getting boat raced. Why would BYU? I mean, I don't think there's much of an argument, honestly, for BYU at this point, especially given Notre Dame did not get in and Miami got in with their head-to-head. That makes tons of sense to me.
Agreed.
And, I mean, at the end of the day, they were not competitive against the best team of the Big 12 in two separate occasions. And you have to play perfectly against Texas Tech, and they didn't. And, Ben Roberts had two incredible individual plays defensively. Sometimes you'll see guys become, beneficiaries of great plays on the defensive side because the ball's tipped or something happens. He made his own breaks twice in that game with two big-time interceptions. And, he's just an afterthought, seemingly, on that defense, which goes to show you how good that defense is. Alabama unequivocally had a more impressive resume than most teams in college football, including a win over Georgia. So I just don't equate those two. To me, it's not as simplistic to say, well, Alabama wasn't punished for playing in their conference championship game and losing by a bunch.
Right.
I mean, they already beat Georgia, had a stretch where they beat a bunch of good teams. It's hard for me to look at Alabama and say that they shouldn't be in, and that I'm equating what BYU had with Alabama. I think Alabama had more impressive wins. Yeah, they had more losses, but at least they beat the team they lost to in the SEC championship.
I mean, I'm kind of torn on it. I don't have a huge problem with them getting in over BYU because of what happened in the Big 12 championship game. However, I do see the side that why isn't Alabama being penalized for the way they lost in their conference championship game? But to your point, on the flip side of that argument is they had already beaten Georgia earlier in the year at Georgia, in Georgia's own backyard. They beat a top 5 team on the road, 24-21. They had the bad loss to Florida State week 0, but they also have wins against a Vanderbilt team that all of a sudden that win, I know at the time wasn't as impressive, but now that's a really quality resume-building win. They have a win at Missouri, who is comparable, I would say, to the teams that BYU beat on their schedule. But the Georgia and Vanderbilt wins, I think, are 2 wins on their schedule. That
How about Tennessee? I mean, they had 4 straight wins against ranked opponents.
Right, and Tennessee was number 11 at the time. Now they've kind of faltered down the stretch. So looking at where these teams are now that these teams have beaten, BYU's best win is against Utah at home. I'm sorry, but Alabama's road win at Georgia is a better side-by-side win. So I think you're splitting hairs with those two teams. I really do. Now, I don't love the narrative that BYU gets clobbered in their conference championship game. Why does it hurt them more than Alabama getting beat like they did in their conference championship game? But the caveat to that is that Alabama had already beaten Georgia,
right,
and BYU got smoked twice.
It's just not that simplistic.
Exactly.
They are taking into account the full resume here. So it's not just, well, they both lost the conference championship games. One team got punished more so than the other team. It's no, they're looking at the full totality of the resumes. I'd love to sit here and say that BYU got hosed, but I don't see it. I think it was way clearer once all the resumes were in who the team should be. And the only disagreement here is the fact that there's the 5 automatic bids for those conference champs, which gives James Madison an opportunity to go up to Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon and get absolutely smoked in a game in a few weeks here.
And if the group of 5 didn't have the automatic bids, I think that's what we should be focused more on than BYU side by side with Miami or Alabama, because those are 3 really quality football teams, and Notre Dame as well, 4 really. So I think BYU and their case could be more built on James Madison and Tulane being in the field. If we don't have those automatic bids, this wasn't a great year for the group of 5. From a top-heavy standpoint. There wasn't a Boise State this year.
Right.
So those are the 2 spots I think these schools should be focused on. But the Big 12 championship game to me said a lot about just how top heavy this conference is with the team at the very top. Like Texas Tech beating BYU twice in a very similar fashion, 29-7 the first time, and then 34-7 when it mattered most. I do think knocked BYU, and I think it's justified. It showed the gap between the team at the top of the conference and everybody else when you lose in that manner. I was very much looking for some style points for BYU, and just unfortunately it didn't happen this year.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think big picture, like there's a lot to love about the future of BYU and how much this was a successful season. In fact, I bumped into the former athletic director, longtime BYU athletic director, Tom Homo, on my way out of the stadium, and had a conversation with him about that, which we'll talk about later on as we get big picture topics on both Texas Tech and BYU, because I think there's a lot for BYU, obviously, to be proud of following this season. So much to get to, including the so-so basketball weekend that was enhanced by the big wins for Arizona and Iowa State. Plus, Kansas gets a big win yesterday against its rival. Iowa State has a new football coach. We'll be talking with his mentor and the legendary South Dakota State coach, John Stiegelmeier, coming up here in about 20 minutes. On the way next, though, more from the CFP bracket reveal, more thoughts on the Big 12 championship game. It's all coming up next. Plus, we'll hear from the coaches. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on a Modelo Monday. We are, of course, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. This is Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Will Connerly is producing today's show. We've got a lot to get to from the crazy sports weekend, not just around football, but basketball, men's and women's. TCU soccer goes down to the Final Four to Florida State. The Big 12 sent 10 teams to the volleyball tournament. Only 2 made it out of the first weekend. Kansas, which will be taking on one of the top volleyball programs in the country, Nebraska in the Sweet 16, and Arizona State also makes it to the Sweet 16. Other than that, 2 were eliminated in the first round. Your Wildcats got eliminated by Nebraska in the round of 32. We'll see if they can go the full Kansas sweep here in Nebraska. Yep. Coming up in a few days or this weekend. So a lot to react to. And, of course, the Big 12 championship. Congratulations to Joey McGuire, Kirby Hocutt, and the Texas Tech college football program winning their first ever Big 12 championship. A top 4 seed gets the bye, heading to the Orange Bowl. An incredible run, an incredible season, finishing off with an incredible game. A very lopsided victory once again against BYU. BYU went up 7-0, and then Texas Tech goes 34 unanswered. And we also learned after the game that Bear Bachmeier got hurt in the first quarter, and actually the first drive. Here is what Kalani Sitake, the BYU head football coach, said following the game about how injured Bear Bachmeier was.
And so when you have a lower leg injury, that causes issues for you to throw the ball. But that's not the excuse. I mean, I think it was it Ben that made a one-handed snag? Like, come on, man! Like, they made some amazing plays, great defense, and offense was efficient. So, you know, I thought overall they just had a great game plan and they just executed. They never panicked. Just really impressed with the poise and composure that they had. And like I said, I mean, when they're full strength and their quarterback's full strength, that they're a dangerous team.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously Kalani saw it front and center, and I agree with him. Like, you know, you're not going to use the injury to Bachmeier as an excuse. Like, this team went out there flat out and just beat them and made some ridiculous plays, including Ben Roberts. Like, the 2 interceptions he had were just 2 incredible individual plays, James.
And the guys that make the highlight reel, defensive, game-changing, impactful turnover plays are linebackers. Ben Roberts is a linebacker. He's the other linebacker that returned from last year that had 100 tackles for Texas Tech. And he gets overlooked so much because of everything Jacob Rodriguez has done this season for the Red Raiders. And Bear Bachmeier, man, he is a competitor, and he battled. But you could tell early in the second half that kid had nothing left. And he left it all out on the field, but he started 13 for, I think, 17 passing, and then he finished the game 3 for 10 in the second half with a couple of interceptions. He was hobbled, and Texas Tech, man, I think that says a lot about not just this one particular player for BYU, but they just wear teams down defensively at the line of scrimmage. Those linebackers, I think they have a really underrated secondary in the way that they just clamp down in their mix of coverages. And defensively, man, they are – we were just talking during the break, are they the best defense in the country? I think we'll find out here in the college football playoff, but they are certainly in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like the name of the game is you've got to rattle the quarterback, and they rattled the quarterback. I mean, the strip sack that they had, I mean, Bachmeier had no time to think about where the blitz was coming from, and, I mean, he just got engulfed and dropped the football. And then, you know, 2 interceptions, like he's looking, he thinks he sees something, and suddenly Ben Roberts appears out of nowhere and takes that window away. I mean, these were incredible plays by the defense, and I just got a sense in watching this game that, like, I'm not sure the rest of the country has any idea how good Texas Tech's defense really is.
Yep.
Like, they're going to watch them and be like, oh, they just hammered a bunch of subpar offensive lines and subpar offenses all year. And, I mean, they're going to find out. They're going to find out. Look, Oregon's a good team, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but, man, I think there's a very high likelihood that the Big 12 is able to get a team into a semifinals. We'll see. Here's what Kalani Sitake had to say about this.
Hey, Coach, considering that both of your losses came at the hands of the same team this year, and a top 4 ranked team at that, do you think that the playoff committee can take that into consideration compared to other 2-loss teams?
Well, I think if you look at what Texas Tech's done, they're the best team in the country for a reason. Their only loss came when they didn't have their starting quarterback, and so that's difficult and on the road. But you look at when they're full strength team, they're dangerous. And so I'm not on the playoff committee, but I can tell you one thing: who's played the best team in the country twice? We have. And does that mean that you're not one of the best 12? I have no idea. I'm not in that committee. I don't make the decisions, but others will find out. That's the great thing about the playoffs. Everybody else will find out what we had to go against, and I'm just really proud of our team. So I can't really speak for everybody else, but from seeing them twice, and even the way that the games went, and watching them and their response to some adversity, I mean, they played really strong, and so I'd love to have a third chance at them, but that's a really good team, and Joey's done a great job with them.
Yeah, I mean, there you go, right? I mean, he called them multiple times the best team in the country during his press conference, James.
Yeah, they fly to the football defensively. Their gap assignment sound. Again, I think they're super underrated with their secondary, and they have so many guys that are just stat stuffers defensively. We know about Jacob Rodriguez and everything he's done, 117 tackles, 11 TFLs, 4 interceptions, 7 forced fumbles, which leads the country. But it's not just him. I mean, Ben Roberts has 74 tackles this year. He has 3 interceptions now, 3 tackles for loss. They don't blitz him a lot. And then their third leading tackler is Cole Wisniewski, who is a transfer from North Dakota State that they brought in this season. He was an FCS All-American, had a really good game last year against Colorado in the opener. He's got 72 tackles and 5 TFLs. Like, they have guys all over the board. David Bailey has almost 20 tackles for loss. The guy has 13 and a half sacks. Then you've got Lee Hunter, who's like their third best defensive lineman. He's at almost 10 TFLs. Romello Height has over 10 TFLs. And, like, that's a benchmark for elite defensive linemen. And they have multiple guys. And then Bryce Pollock, I think, is a really underrated cornerback. He's got 5 picks on the season. They just suffocate you defensively, and then they get these big momentum-swinging, turnover-worthy plays. And Baron Morton in the offense is very Ohio State last year-esque in that they're no longer the Texas Tech air raid. They're ball control. I mean, they still throw it around the yard, but they lean on their ground game. They rest that defense. And the Texas Tech experiment has been a slam dunk. Like, before the season,
yeah, you're right.
We knew that this roster was talented. We thought that they were underrated. But did we think they'd have a first-round bye in the college football playoff? I mean, it is A+ across the board. They've checked every box this year.
When we wondered what the expectations were for this team, given the resources that were spent to build this roster. And I mean, I would say that they've met at this point expectations.
Oh yeah, I mean, the expectations coming into the year. Remember, everybody's telling us from the Texas Tech side, it's college football playoff or bust. Well, not only did they make the playoff, they were in win or lose on Saturday, but to get a bye and a top 4 seed in this conference, and we know how good this conference is, but there's this narrative that the conference isn't as strong as the SEC and the Big Ten, and you've got ESPN's $300 million investment into the SEC. So all of that, you have to be so dominant that you leave no stone unturned in terms of how good you are, and they've done that this year. It's just been an incredible run.
Here's what Jacob Rodriguez said about what it means to win the Big 12 championship.
Jacob, what does it mean to win Texas Tech's first Big 12 championship?
It means everything. I think for this team and then this university and all of West Texas, I think everybody's given us so much. I'm just glad that we can be a team to give it back.
How do you roll this momentum into the playoffs?
We just got to keep doing our thing. Our process is something that we've leaned on the whole year. And once we get into a routine, it's easy to go from there. And it's fun to come into work. And, stuff like this makes it worth it. And so we're really excited for the opportunity to keep going.
Absolutely. Any final words before the last push before New York for your Heisman campaign?
You talk about number 13 next year.
Jacob, what is...
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even want to answer the question there about the Heisman, just giving props to Ben Roberts. And look, it's great in this game to see Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez play at the level they played at. Those are two guys that have been around Texas Tech's defense for a long time, have been on some bad defenses. Roberts has dealt with a ton of injuries in his career, so it's great for him to be back as a guy that's from DFW, from the Metroplex, for him to be back in his home where he's from. And yeah, that was our friend Kylie Austin from Big 12 Studios interviewing Jacob Rodriguez following their Big 12 championship victory. Congratulations to Texas Tech. All right, more on this coming up, including the CFP. We'll get into all that. On the way next, though, Iowa State, Matt Campbell's off to Penn State, and Jamie Pollard waited no time to fill this position. Iowa State has hired the former South Dakota State linebacker and head coach who spent 1 year at Washington State, Jimmy Rogers, and his former mentor and former head coach, the guy who coached him at South Dakota State and coached with him at South Dakota State, John Stiegelmeier, the legendary South Dakota State head coach, joins us next. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo here on a Modelo Monday, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. We are so pleased to be joined right now by the legendary football coach. Was at South Dakota State from 1997 to 2022, won a national championship, and then stepped down to hand the reins over to the new Iowa State football coach, Jimmy Rogers, who played for John Stiegelmeier at South Dakota State. And John Stiegelmeier, the former South Dakota State coach, joins us right now here on Big 12 Radio. Coach, how are you?
I'm super. Really couldn't be better at our daughter-in-laws and our daughter and son-in-laws, 3 grandkids, and I get to talk football. So how much better can it get?
Yeah, no kidding. And what a remarkable run you had at South Dakota State. You know, we think of from an FCS perspective how dominant, the Dakotas and South Dakota State, North Dakota State, obviously with Chris Kleiman having coached in the Big 12 for as long as he has. I mean, what incredible programs. And you presided over South Dakota State for many, many years, and then you're able to win a national championship and then step away and hand the keys over to Jimmy. So I just kind of give our audience and Iowa State fans a perspective there that, here's a guy that played for you at linebacker, a legendary linebacker at South Dakota State, and then became a DC under you. How did you know that he was going to be the right guy to take over?
Well, when you spend as much time with Jimmy as I did, and it doesn't take near that amount of time, but unbelievable leader. His work ethic is off the charts, and people say that stuff, but that they're talking about people that many times work at 80% of their potential. That is not Coach Rogers. When I offered Coach Rogers 65% plus books in the Chandler, Arizona at his home, he shook my hand before I put the period at the end of the sentence and said, I'll be there. And basically from that moment said, I'm going to help you win a national championship, us win a national championship. So, and I'll sum it up this way. A guy named Jay Bubach, who was his defensive coordinator, said this in a staff meeting one day, that Jimmy Rogers impacted SDSU football more as a player than anybody else has ever, coaches included. Wow. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, Coach, that the Jackrabbit way, if you will, what did that culture look like, and how much did Jimmy carry that forward as a player and then as a coach when he took over for you, and what can you tell us about what that culture is going to look like in Ames?
Well, he lived it, number one, and then he carried it over. And I think one of the really important things as a head coach is you need to be who God made you to be. And myself and Jimmy Rogers are not the same person. So he took, some of what we did and put it to our program, and then Washington State's, and now Iowa State. What was it? It was a program built on hard work, character. I think one of the things that I think is unique about our program and what Jimmy really defined was our coaches are great teachers of football. You see a lot of mistakes on the football field, and I say that as a coach. Maybe fans don't see that. Maybe broadcasters, media guys don't see it, but I relate that back. What was the young man taught? And these guys will be great teachers, as was Coach Campbell's staff. I know that because I studied those guys and competed against those guys. So I think those are some things: work ethic, intensity, brotherhood. They will be close. They will talk about family. They won't talk about culture. So I think things like that, I think, are part of Jimmy's DNA.
312 tackles as a South Dakota State linebacker over 4 seasons. He was a 3-time All-American and only left the program twice. Once to be a GA for a year at Florida Atlantic, and then, of course, to take over at Washington State's head coach. So, I mean, is there, in your mind, is it sort of bittersweet to a degree because South Dakota State is now doing it up larger at not just the FCS level, but obviously now in the Big 12? But, a guy that spent his entire career at South Dakota State and meant so much to that program, helping to win another national championship as well?
Well, obviously you want the people you love to have success. You want the people that you love to maybe run a program you invested in, or a lot of, hundreds of people invested in. But it didn't matter what assistant coach was on our staff, we always said, what is best for you in your career? And loyalty is having 2 feet in the door, 2 feet in your office, your mentality there, 100% giving to your players in the program. That is loyalty. It isn't the fact that a guy gets an opportunity, leaves. That there's going to be loyalty to another program. So I'm happy for Jimmy, and I'm going to go back to your tackle total. This isn't going to make sense to anybody other than me, but we had postulates in our program. I'm a math teacher by trade, and a postulate is something you can't argue. And one of the postulates was the Jimmy Rogers postulate. And the postulate simply is defined as this: go beyond the measurables. All right, you can test the guy's 40, his vertical, his height, weight, the size of his hands, all those things, and transcript and film. But there's something either inside a guy or not inside a guy that will take him beyond those things. And Jimmy had a postulate named after him because he was a picture of that.
Coach, you were at South Dakota State for almost 3 decades. Like when you took over in the 90s, this wasn't an FCS program. This was Division II, and you went 4-6 your first year in '97. You retired after winning a national championship in 2022, going 14-1, running the table in a very difficult league. And I get that everybody's different, but you have a similar kind of story as Kyle Whittingham at Utah, who's flirting with retirement just about every offseason. So for you, after you won that national championship, did you know that, hey, this is it? Like, it's time? What went into your decision to step away after you guys got that national title?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's the only way to be, I guess. That always sounds kind of funny. I had made that decision. My wife and I, Lori and I, had made that decision before the semifinal game. And there were a number of things that, again, being a math guy, a number of vectors that intersected. There's never one reason. It surely was not a national championship because it was made before that. And honestly, it was because Coach Rogers had another opportunity that was going to pay him 3 times what he ended up getting paid as the head coach. But I wanted somebody on the staff become the head coach, not to carry on anything, but to protect the other coaches. Because we all know when a head coach changes in a program, everybody is released. You know, maybe one coach is held, maybe one administrator is held, but everybody is gone. And on a very simple and human sense, you ask those guys to work 100 hours a week, and then you risk their careers because of your well-being. And so that was the main reason, and it worked out.
Wow, that's incredible. We're so excited to be joined right now by the former head coach of South Dakota State, John Stiegelmeier, here, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. All right, let's talk defense. You're a math guy and you're a defensive guy, and so is Jimmy Rogers. And, you know, we were just talking a little bit during the break, but, you know, John Haycock is an incredible defensive coordinator. I'm assuming he's going with Matt Campbell to Penn State. He's the author of the 3-3-5 defense, the rush 3, drop 8. So Iowa State fans are going to have a lot of fun watching the complete opposite defense. This is a more traditional 4-3 that you guys ran, and I'm assuming Rogers is going to run here. And, you know, it resembles that of Kyle Whittingham defensively with Utah. It's more straight up. It's more press. It's quarters. Give us a sense here of what this defense is going to look like.
Well, I'm going to go back to something I mentioned earlier. It doesn't matter what your scheme is. Number one, you have to be able to teach it. And that sounds funny to people, but it's not. Football is a complicated game. You watch it, there's a lot of stuff going on a football field, a lot of adjustments, especially by the defense. And number one, they're going to be sound. What does that mean? That means they line up on 3-back option, they're going to have an answer. They line up in unbalanced, they're going to have an answer. They're going to line up and spread, no back motion out, strong or weak, they're going to have an answer. And it's going to be mastered. Now, let's pause there. What does that mean? That means the guys are going to be able to play full speed because they've had enough reps at all those things that they won't be caught off guard and they won't be on their heels and so on. They'll play a lot of D linemen if the depth allows it because of that's where you win up front on defense is those guys getting after the fat guys on offense. And that's just the way the way the world worked for us, and will work for Jimmy. But that's a depth thing, and I think that's the case. You got to have great corners, if you're going to play press man.
Yeah.
But they play a lot of different variations. Let's give Jesse Bobbitt some credit. The guy that's been the coordinator the last 3 years, 2 at SDSU, played for Jimmy, played linebacker for Jimmy, grew up in a coach's family. Jesse's a phenomenal coach, and I don't know if he'll be on the staff, but I know this. He also had a big part of this.
Mm.
Coach, I imagine you have some incredible stories, so I'd love to ask, can you give us a story that kind of captures who Jimmy Rogers is behind the scenes as either a player or a coach that you can share with us here on the air?
Probably it's the general story, but it defines who he is. Jimmy is going to do everything to perfection, but he's going to prioritize. And Jimmy Rogers would, as a player, let's go back to his influence. He grew his hair long, right? Pick on him for that. He grew his hair partway down his back. What happened after he graduated? Every linebacker started growing his hair long in our program. Christian Roseboom, who plays for the Carolina NFL team, has his hair long, and Jimmy was his coach. But Jimmy, back to the specific question, Jimmy would watch film until he had everything down, and he may watch till 12 o'clock at midnight. Then he'd do his schoolwork, all right? And he was a student athlete, but he was going to make sure that football stuff was taken care of first. And so dedication. And I can tell you about the McNeese game when we should have beat the number 3 team in America. He knew the exact play they were running. He just didn't bat it down. He tipped it up, and they ended up beating us in 3 overtimes. Wow. but it wasn't because it was our job. That's a long story. I apologize to go down that rabbit hole. But anyway, he knew everything about the opposing team as a player.
Mm. Yeah, and you talk about some of those alums. I mean, I was watching Tucker Kraft last night beat my Bears from the Packers. Dallas Goedert, obviously a huge name at the tight end position. Going back, Riley Reif is an offensive tackle that played at South Dakota State. There's been some incredible talent and players that have come through that program. And I think, ultimately, South Dakota State is so similar to Iowa State in that regard, where you've got to be a developmental program. And I know you've touched on this, Coach, but to me, it's so important that Jamie Pollard, the athletic director at Iowa State, made a quick decision here because he knew right away that this was a guy that he was following that was going to be exactly what Iowa State needs in terms of, they're not going to be playing in the sandbox trying to recruit 4- and 5-star recruits like Texas Tech and like some of these other programs in the Big 12. They need to maximize the talent they do get, maximize those 3 stars. And clearly you and Jimmy and the other coaches that have come through South Dakota State do such a good job of punching above their weight in terms of talent.
Again, I'm going to intersect. You're exactly right, but I'm going to intersect the 3-star, the 4-star, the 5-star. That is based on measurables. That is based on solely what has been measured physically and the play on the film. And so we always talked about, and Jimmy's an example of this, is a product of this. You build a football program. You don't recruit it, you build it. And you build it with the right type of people and the people that are going to be committed and be able to do their job. And so whether they have 3 stars or 2 stars, Tucker Kraft may be the best NFL tight end, and he didn't have a star. I don't think he had a star behind his name. I'm not sure what that means because we never even looked at it at South Dakota State. Dallas Goedert that walked on at South Dakota State. I know he didn't have any stars on it behind his name. Phenomenal players. Mason McCormick, who starts for the Steelers at right guard. And I'm not talking about South Dakota State. I'm talking about that type of individual that Iowa State has used and had success and used it, has developed. And so he'll build it. He'll be methodical about it. The difference nowadays, and you guys know this, and I appreciate you not bringing it up, is the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. And you can redo your roster, but you know what? You only get a week to figure out who that kid is, and you can't go beyond the measurables when you're doing that.
Well said. Oh, man. Thank you so much for your time. This was so much fun. John Stiegelmeier, the legendary South Dakota State head football coach, of course, coached with and for, or rather with and coached the new head football coach for Iowa State, Jimmy Rogers. John, thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Coach.
That's a treat. Thanks. Bless you guys. Take care.
Take care. Great John Stiegelmeier joining us here, giving us his sense of his former player and a guy that I would imagine Jimmy Rogers has as a mentor. That's John Stiegelmeier, the legendary South Dakota State head football coach.
And you look at what Jimmy Rogers did in his one season this year at Washington State. Washington State and Oregon State's rosters were completely gutted. I mean, decimated by the transfer portal and conference realignment. And he takes a Washington State team on the road at Ole Miss and almost beat them. 24-21 was the final. Then he went on the road and played a Virginia team that just played in the ACC championship game, had them on the ropes, lost 22-20, a field goal difference there. Then they played James Madison, who's also in the college football playoff field. The score of that game, 24-20. I mean, he took a team that, to what Coach Stiegelmeier was just to kind of magnify his point, a team that talent measurables, roster construction-wise, didn't belong on the field with those schools, and they took them down to the wire. He gets to 6 wins, bowl eligibility. They played Oregon State twice this year, and they lost 10-7 the first time. Then they beat them 32-8 on the final regular season Saturday, which says a lot about his coaching, his growth, and what he did with, again, a roster that barely had enough players to field a team because of conference realignment, and they still put together a top 25 defense. That should be really exciting for Iowa State fans.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more to say on Jimmy Rogers and all that, but great insight there from the guy who knows, John Stiegelmeier, the former South Dakota State head football coach. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today. Coming up next, we hand out our yearly awards. Normally on Mondays, we would get out the weeklies. How about our yearly Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year for this season? How about our Coach of the Year in the Big 12? That's all coming up next. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Did I break any of the fan rules by Modelo? Of course, Big 12 Radio brought to you by the Full-Time Fan by Modelo. Did I break any of those rules? I can't remember. We did them on Friday. I think I did well.
I think you crushed it. No, I don't think you broke any of those fan rules.
Good.
Which there are some bangers. I can't remember what we went over on Friday, but I think you were professional. You were polished. How many Modelo's deep by mid-third quarter were you? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
I was working, so, I couldn't have only been like 5 or 6 at that point. All right, Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today. Great stuff with the former South Dakota State head football coach, John Stiegelmeier, who coached South Dakota State between 97 and 2022, won a national championship. Coach Jimmy Rogers had nothing but incredible things to say about the new Iowa State football coach, and can't wait to see what this thing looks like, because I think he's the perfect guy that Jamie Pollard was able to get.
Man, totally agree. And they moved really quickly on this. And that's the parallel between Iowa State and Kansas State. Two very similar programs in that they compete from an NIL standpoint, but they also are built on player development, roster retention. They do the little things. They always win the penalties and the turnovers, and they don't beat themselves. And I know these fan bases love to go at it when it comes to Farmageddon, but they're really similar programs. And the parallel between them and even Oklahoma State, which I think is really exciting for this conference, all three schools have hired 3 young up-and-comers in the college football coaching industry. Jimmy Rogers is 38. Colin Klein is 36. Eric Morris, the North Texas coach who will be at Oklahoma State, he just turned 40. So you have 3 guys that were, number one, very sought after, I think, when it comes to the whole big picture. Jimmy Rogers could have taken another job. Colin Klein was a very attractive candidate. Everybody wanted Eric Morris. So I love that. I think these are 3 slam dunk hires in this conference. And now, if they have success, other programs are going to try and poach them, but maybe they're here for the long term, and you can see these guys develop into a Chris Kleiman or a Matt Campbell or even a Mike Gundy the early years of his tenure. I'm really pumped for all 3 hires. I think they're really good.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, we spent a bunch of this season wondering how many coaches were going to be replaced in the Big 12.
We've officially hit the over, by the way.
Right.
Because you and I had 2.5.
We never thought that the over would hit, and certainly not with the coaches that ended up leaving.
Yes.
I mean, Chris Kleiman retiring, and obviously Matt Campbell deciding to finally leave Iowa State and take the Penn State job, and look, good for him. I'm sure certainly there's some hard feelings from Iowa State fans, but at the end of the day, the dude stayed for a long time, built something absolutely incredible, and now hands over the program to Jimmy Rogers, who's 38 years old, who's in a similar spot that Campbell was when he took this job from Toledo a decade ago.
Exactly.
But this program is in a much better state.
Mm-hmm. No bad blood. There shouldn't be any bad blood. And
exactly.
This was Matt Campbell's last chance. I mean, this is his window to take a job like this, and I don't fault him for it.
No.
I'm never going to knock somebody for trying to better themselves and try a new challenge. What else could he accomplish at Iowa State? He's had so much success. The winningest season in school history. I mean, that says all that I need to hear about his tenure. And the fact that Iowa State moved on this so quickly leads me to believe that Matt Campbell was very transparent with Jamie Pollard and the administration, helped them in whatever direction they were going to go to make this as clean as possible, like Kleiman did with Kansas State. And I admire the way that both of those guys handled it. And I love the direction that these Big 12 schools are headed. And, yeah, when we played over-under less than 2 weeks ago, the coaches that we were discussing, it was Dave Aranda at Baylor. We both said, oh, yeah, he won't be back next year. He gets a vote of confidence. And then we played over-under, and we talked about coaches that could be on the hot seat and how many of these coaches would survive 2026. And it was Lance Leipold, it was Chris Kleiman, it was Scott Satterfield, and it was Dave Aranda. Never in a million years did I think one of those 4 coaches outside of Aranda would be out this season. So that was shocking to see Kleiman retire, and then the Matt Campbell stuff.
Yeah. More on this coming up, including what Jamie Pollard had to say as the athletic director announced, that Matt Campbell was leaving, the emotions behind it, and, of course, how quickly they moved to hire Jimmy Rogers, which, to your point, certainly makes it seem like Pollard had a sense of, Campbell wasn't going to be there forever. And Pollard, I would imagine, had this guy in his back pocket, knowing for years that this is the guy he wanted to replace him. And at some point, the time would come. All right, Big 12 today. Each and every week on a Monday during the football season, we give you our, player of the week, freshman of the week, coach of the week, jersey of the week, atmosphere of the week. We decided with just the one game this week, let's do it for the season. And let's go with our offensive and defensive players of the year, our coach of the year, our freshman of the year. Plus, we can give a player of the week and a stat of the week as well from the game. Let's start there. Let's start with our player of the week. Who is your player of the week? Not of course, of the year. We'll get to that in a second. But who is your player of the week this week?
Okay, this is player of the week, and this can be offense or defense.
Yeah.
No, I did yearly awards, but that's okay. It's got to be Ben Roberts, right? Those 2 interceptions for Texas Tech. He would be my player of the game. He would be my defensive player of the game. So much as talked about Jacob Rodriguez and what he's done this year at basically the same position. Well, Ben Roberts said, "Hold my Modelo." He was huge in that game with those 2 picks.
Well, and I want you to give the stat of the week, because this only exists because of how absurd the stat is.
Yeah, BYU had a 90-yard opening drive. They only had 110 yards the rest of the entire game. They finished with 200, most of it on that very first drive before Texas Tech said, okay, let's lock in and let's go to work.
Yeah, BYU was held to a season-low 200 yards. There's your 90 on the first drive and 110 over the rest of the game. That's the lowest they were held to in the season since being held to 255 yards, also against Texas Tech. So just incredible by that Texas Tech defense against this very good BYU offense. All right, who is your freshman of the year? Let's go with that.
Okay, I couldn't tell if this was a serious question. You guys said, hey, have you sent your awards? I said, we aren't actually doing freshman of the year, are we? It's Bear Bachmeier. Everything
Shocking.
he did this season for BYU. Set a Big 12 record with like 8 freshman of the year awards this season. I know he wasn't at his best against Texas Tech, but who would be? They did that to a lot of quarterbacks, but Bear this season on paper, on the field, never in a billion years did I think BYU would be better, which I think they are, than they were last season when they lose Retzloff late in the year. Bear steps in. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think it's only fair for some BYU fans to wonder what this thing might have looked like had Retzloff still been their quarterback, especially as he leads Tulane into the playoff. But I think moving forward, you've got to feel really good about where your program is with this guy quarterback. He took some freshman lumps this year, but dude's a linebacker. He's a gamer. He's tough to break down. He had an incredible season. Yeah, he's undoubtedly the freshman of the year, to your point. Nobody really even in the same stratosphere as him in terms of this award. He played so well over the course of this season. There were many times he did not look like a true freshman. The freshman named Bear, who only looked like a freshman against Texas Tech, a dominant defense. Bear Bachmeier, the freshman of the year. All right, who is your defensive player of the year? We're going with the obvious ones first.
Okay.
Here.
Jacob Rodriguez.
Yeah. No, I had to scour the statistical evidence to figure it out. Who should this be?
I mean, I do think you could make a case for David Bailey. He was sensational as well on that defensive front. I didn't think he could have the same level of success that he had at Stanford in his 1 year at Texas Tech this year. And
he did.
He did. But Jacob Rodriguez, those 117 tackles, the 4 picks, leading the country in forced fumbles. There's a reason why he's in the conversation for the Heisman. Even had a couple of rushing touchdowns because Texas Tech, it's like video game stuff. They put their linebacker in at running back because they think he might need a couple of offensive touchdowns to win a Heisman, and he goes out there and he plows over right guard for a touchdown like it's nothing. He had a hell of a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because watching the game in the stadium, a few people in the first Ben Roberts interception, they were like, oh, is that Rodriguez? It's like, no, that's 13. It's 10, but it just goes to show you that like every splash play made on defense seemed to be attributed to Jacob Rodriguez because he made every splash play on defense. Taylor McHarg had the stat before the game. Dude averages a turnover a game. Not the team. Rodriguez averages a turnover a game.
Some teams don't do that.
Right. So, yeah, incredible season for Jacob Rodriguez. You hope it ends with an invite to New York, and we'll find out soon if it does, and certainly should. We'll see, but the dude was a monster, and again, so emblematic of this team. When you think about all of the money spent, all the players they brought in, and whatever else, it was Ben Roberts leading them to the Big 12 championship and Jacob Rodriguez, two linebackers that have been there, that have been through the lumps, that have been on some bad defenses, that shined the brightest. So congratulations, of course, to Jacob Rodriguez. There's more hardware coming his way. All right, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. How about the Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12?
All right, my Offensive Player of the Year, and this was really tough because this is a year that nobody really stands out. There's only one 1,000-yard receiver in this conference. There's only 3 1,000-yard rushers in this conference. This conference had a lot more balance top to bottom, running backs by committee, and the defenses were really good this year. So my Offensive Player of the Year is a guy that you brought up last time we did this exercise. I'm going with Noah Fafita, the quarterback at Arizona. He is the only quarterback in the conference that is top 4 in yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, and passing efficiency. The only one in the league. Collectively, sure, his 247 yards per game don't jump off the page, but 26 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, 64% of his passes, and I just love his story. He's had some roller coaster years. He wasn't at his best last year, but under a new offensive coordinator, he was polished, he was efficient, and he was plenty dynamic, and they had a major breakthrough year in Tucson.
Yeah, he was without a doubt the quarterback of the year in the Big 12. I mean, Sawyer Robertson obviously had the statistics, so did Josh Hoover, but sort of seemed empty to a degree relative to what Noah Fafita was able to do in leading his team to a 9-3 record this season. A huge surprise there. I'm going to go, though, as my Offensive Player of the Year as L.J. Martin, because to me, this was the year of the running back in a year we thought going in would be the year of the quarterback. It had to be paid off with the running back. The leading rusher in the Big 12 this year, L.J. Martin, 1,300 yards rushing, 200 yards ahead of number 2 in Raleek Brown. So think about that. He finished well above Raleek Brown in terms of rushing, and then 1,500 all-purpose yards for L.J. Martin, averaging 120 yards per game. Only Raleek Brown averaged more yards per game and 120.5. When you think about all the weapons that Arizona State had, you know, BYU had the weapons, but the success that BYU had this season, to me, goes back to L.J. Martin on offense. He was the engine of this locomotive, and he was the reason BYU had the success they had. Bear Bachmeier did a really good job in running off of him and leading the offense, but it was all about what L.J. Martin was able to do. We thought that he could have a breakthrough season if he would be healthy, and he was healthy enough this year to lead the league in rushing. Congratulations to L.J. Martin, my Offensive Player of the Year. All right, Coach of the Year, James.
Man, this was tough because I think there's a lot of candidates that are worthy of this award. I think we could almost do a starting 5 of Big 12 coaches this year because there were so many, but I'm going with Kalani Sitake. To win 11 games, back-to-back seasons, to do it with a true freshman quarterback, to lose your veteran leader late in the offseason, to have a true freshman who joins the team late in the recruiting cycle from Stanford, they flip him, and to beat everybody on your schedule not named Texas Tech, and to do it with complimentary football, both sides of the ball. I think his assistant coaches are really underrated. I think the way that he kind of navigates the Big 12 turbulence with all the outside noise, tough environments every time they go on the road, to have 4 or 5 wins in come-from-behind fashion tells me he's making big-time halftime adjustments because they were so much better in the second half. They're just rock solid. And next year, if the Big 12 had a preseason poll, it would go Texas Tech, BYU, Utah for next year. No doubt about it with what everybody has coming back. And Sitake turning down Penn State to return to BYU is huge for the league. He is my Big 12 Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I love that, and glad you recognized Kalani Sitake for the incredible season he had. My Big 12 Coach of the Year is Joey McGuire. And look, I mean, to your point, like Brett Brennan, Willie Fritz are two guys that certainly could be in this conversation.
Yep.
But, I mean, they went out, they earmarked a roster with his buddy James Blanchard. Joey McGuire was able to put together a championship-level roster. You know, we wondered what the expectations were. What did Texas Tech need to do this year to meet expectations? Well, they've done it. The number 4 seed, top 4 seed, heading into the college football playoff. They get a bye, and then they're playing a quarterfinal matchup in the Orange Bowl. They go 12-1, and for the first time ever in program history, win a Big 12 championship. And how about Joey McGuire? When you think about his first 4 years, 8-5, 7-6, 8-5, and now 12-1. What an incredible season for Joey McGuire, the coach of the year in the Big 12, because they didn't just do it because of the talent they had. They did it because the coach brought this group together, galvanized locker room, got them all pulling on the same rope, and that is a difficult thing to do.
Yes, and I think it's a very underrated thing. Everybody thinks, oh, you just have all this talent. Of course you're going to beat people the way that you did. They led the nation in scoring margin. They did things that only 6 college football teams have done ever in the history of the sport in the way they were beating people. And this Big 12 conference, there was a clear gap between Texas Tech and everybody else, and everybody else is still pretty dang good. I think we'll find out in the bowl season just how strong this league is top to bottom.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. I'm sure we'll have plenty of other awards to give out for this season as we think through some of the, best acquisitions and other, best GM perhaps. We'll get some other awards for the Big 12 as we move along throughout this week. All right, James Westling, Ari Tepkin, Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. We've got basketball to get to, plus we'll get you caught up on the sports weekend with the NCAA volleyball tournament, the Final Four in soccer, and what a huge weekend it was on the hardwood for the Big 12 with Iowa State getting a tremendous win at Purdue. It's historic what Iowa State did, plus Arizona as well. It's all coming up next. It's all coming up. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here into your home for the Big 12 Conference. Tune in. If you've not yet already, make sure to download the TuneIn app and search Big 12 Radio. That way you can find us each and every time you open up the app. Plus, we're also streaming live on Big 12 Studios, so check out big12studios.com to see all the platforms in which you can stream and watch this show each and every day, including Tubi, Roku, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, and plenty of other platforms. Check out big12studios.com to find all the places you can watch us. All right, we'll get into basketball coming up. Huge basketball weekend. There were some really tough losses for the Big 12, but big-time wins for some of these programs. And when the AP Top 25 comes out later today, we'll see what that looks like, but could have a couple of Big 12 teams in the top. Perhaps, we'll see. But more fallout and thoughts from the Big 12 championship game on Saturday. Where did you end up watching the game? I know you were in Houston for Houston, Florida State. It's the reason you couldn't be with us on the broadcast. We missed you. Where'd you end up watching the game?
I ended up watching the game at Florida State and Houston's basketball shoot-arounds. So I was there basically all day. We started at 11 a.m. The teams went back-to-back, and I watched both practices. So I watched the game on my laptop, and I'm so glad you brought this up because it says a lot about this league and how much we support one another. Kelvin Sampson, the Houston men's basketball coach, and a ton of assistants, even players, were coming over to check on the score periodically. They wanted to know what was happening, and everybody's so locked into that BYU-Texas Tech game. Even the Florida State coach, Luke Laux, is a huge college football fan. His dad played at Florida State. He grew up watching Warwick Dunn and Derek Brooks, and even he was locked in to the Big 12 championship game. So it was just a really cool environment there in Houston. And, man, that Houston men's basketball team, I'm telling you right now, Kelvin brought up a great point. Like, there are so many games even in the NCAA tournament that if one ball doesn't go, if a free throw doesn't go in, if Duke doesn't miss those late-game free throws, or if Milo Suzan doesn't get wide open underneath the basket against Purdue, he's like, a lot of it's luck, how far these teams go in the NCAA tournament. So I'm not going to say they're going to win the Natty just quite yet because of that, but this team is better than last year's team. I'm fully convinced after seeing them in person over the weekend.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that coming up, including what Iowa State, what Arizona did, what Kansas did this weekend. That's all coming up. But, my friend Chris Rodriguez with VetTix, who's a great partner of the Big 12, he, with many of the other corporate partners, was in a suite upstairs at Jerry World, so I went up there with him, and it was a great experience. I mean, you want to talk about how, first class the Big 12 is in terms of the setup inside the suite, but, for corporate partners, it was incredible. They had a belt maker making belts with this incredible Big 12 belt buckle. Yes.
Like an actual belt.
Yeah.
Felt like there was a punchline coming, but we're talking about a real belt.
There was a long line in the suite and I was like, what's happening here? Why is this line so long? And then I see, there's this incredible leather maker, Leatherman, what do you describe them, who's, measuring custom belts for people and then giving them this Big 12 belt buckle. It was awesome. I got in line and was getting up there to get it, and they're like, you need a card. And I was like, are you serious? How do I get my card? But it just goes to show, how first class the Big 12 is from, in every capacity. And it was really cool was Michael Redd, the former NBA star, former Ohio State star.
Yeah, he was a baller.
Was in the suite because he's a corporate partner of the Big 12s. And, I mean, of course, I found out later, he's boys with Tyrell Kirkham, the chief marketing officer of the Big 12, so I should have known that. But so I went up to him, started talking to him, and at first I was like, so why are you here? Because he's an Ohio State grad.
Right.
I'm like, why aren't you in Indianapolis? He's like, well, because I have business interests with the Big 12. They invited me out. I was like, it says a lot about the Big 12 that this dude and he said he was invited to the Ohio State Indiana Big Ten championship game by the athletic director at Ohio State. He's like, yeah, I was invited by the AD, but I'm here instead. And so, I mean, that was just cool to talk hoops with him. I mean, I asked him about his thoughts on Darren Peterson and, what was going on in Big 12 hoops and got his impressions. It was really cool.
Dude, you buried the lead with Michael Redd.
Yeah.
Did not think we had a Michael Redd reference coming on today's show.
Yeah, I didn't think he'd be in the suite.
Tyrell, we got to make this happen. I was obsessed with Michael Redd. When he was at Ohio State, silky smooth, 6'6" wing player. He was left-handed, and he was a bucket getter, certified. Then he goes to the NBA. He gets drafted mid-second round, ended up averaging over 20 points per game for 1, 2, 3, 7 seasons in the NBA as a guy that was taken like mid-second round. He's one of the best second-round draft picks in NBA history. Super jealous you got to hang out with Michael Redd.
Yeah, it was fun. It was cool. And, what's interesting is I brought up Kelvin Sampson. Kelvin Sampson was an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks when he was on the Bucks. So he was talking about how much he loves Kelvin Sampson, because I was telling him, I mean, for my money, he's the best coach from a basketball perspective in the Big 12, and there's lots of good coaches. That's a difficult conversation to have. He was like, oh, yeah, I loved playing for him. And, he was an assistant on those Bucks, some of those Bucks teams with Scott Skiles as the head coach. So, he was really cool to hang out with and talk shop with.
Dude, that's awesome.
Really nice guy. The other thing is, so I spent the last 48 hours basically at Cosm. I went twice in 24 hours.
Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome.
That's let's just start with that.
I mean, look, you say no.
I say no 3,078 times, and 3,079 invite doesn't happen, Will.
But also, by the way, you weren't invited. No, I mean, so
Bears fans only. Okay.
Chris Rodriguez from VetTix, again, a great organization that partners with the Big 12, that supplies tickets to sports events, to concerts, to the Sphere for veterans. Need to check out VetTix if you're a veteran and get signed up so you can be a part of what VetTix does, or check out the website and support what they do. He bought some tickets for the Big Ten championship game, so watched it there, which was an awesome experience at Cosm up there at the Colony here in the DFW area. And then I'd already planned on going with some friends, but got invited to go watch the Bears-Packers game there last night. It was a lot of fun.
Who won that game, by the way? I turned it off at halftime. Was it? I truly didn't.
Oh, I didn't know.
I swear I didn't know. We had a full day of basketball. We're at like this MAYB club tournament thing. I'm watching the game, and then, kind of got distracted.
Same, what happened to the Chiefs last night? Did they win or did they lose?
I couldn't tell you, actually.
Not a full-time fan.
Not.
The Chiefs lost, so do the Bears.
So they're 6-7 now. Yeah, the dynasty's dead. It's dead.
It's dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The old witch, the wicked witch. The Bears lost, but it was. I mean, Cosm continues to just be like, if you have not yet been, it is so worth it and such an incredible game watching experience. I highly recommend it. And going with two of my friends last night that had never been, they were just blown away by it. They were like, you've got to kind of have your impressions going in, and then when you go, it's just you're blown away by how incredible.
And there needs to be more in more cities. I know that we talk about it a lot, and it's here, and it's L.A., and
but
it's
I love
like
that it's not
Vegas. Yeah, it's very.
It's like, if you know, you know.
It's
like,
a luxury item that we have here in Dallas.
You guys don't have that?
I'm trying to explain the Sphere to like my dad. He's like, "What? You just watch it on a big TV?" No, Dad. It's like you're at the game.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It was a lot of fun. All right, the Big 12 championship game, Texas Tech once again, dominated BYU in the same capacity that they dominated BYU in the first game. And look, I mean, I thought you could make the case that BYU went into the first game scared. And, I mean, you look at it like Texas Tech's offense went 3 and out in the first game in Lubbock, and then BYU muffs the punt. And so, like, off the jump, this game was closer. And BYU seemed a lot more prepared. But you just have to be perfect against Texas Tech. And what was the score? Like 13-7 heading into the second half? So, I mean, it was close through the first 2+ quarters of this football game. But, like, you just have to be perfect against them. And in the second half, Bear Bachmeier and this offense was just not perfect. They just kept putting the ball on the carpet because that's what they do. They hit you hard and they get off blocks. Like, they make you think about where those hits are coming from. And you could just sense that, I don't think BYU was scared of the second half, but it was clear that the aggression for which Texas Tech plays defense impacted them in the second half when they were putting the ball on the ground.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. I mean, the advanced metrics from this game just magnify how dominant Texas Tech was defensively. I mean, they held BYU to an average of 3 yards per rush, not just for the game, but on that uber critical first down. I mean, BYU's average first down gain was 3.9 yards. That's not enough to move the chains against a Texas Tech team that is elite on third down when they can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse to a degree, but Texas Tech and Oregon has potential to be such a great matchup because Oregon is kind of Texas Tech-like in that they're underrated defensively, number one, But then number two, they're super deep offensively. They don't have one standout guy. Everybody talks about their quarterback and Dante Moore, but their running backs, they have 3 running backs that average over 6.5 yards per carry. In fact, their most explosive running back, De'Aaron Hill, averages 8.2 yards per carry. So it's truly an offense by committee. Their leading receiver has barely 500 yards on the season. This is Oregon I'm talking about.
Right.
You look at Texas
Is
Tech.
it Evan Stewart?
Malik Benson is their leading receiver.
Right. Okay. Because Stewart was out for the year, and at one point I thought he was still their leading receiver. Amazingly.
Yeah, he is. I don't think he's played much this season. At least I don't see him in their top 6 receivers.
Then I was totally wrong about that.
Their running backs, Noah Whittington and Jordan Davidson was a highly touted kid. But their running backs, they all average, like I said, over 6.5 yards per carry. And Dante Moore's kind of a game manager for them. They don't have a Marcus Mariota. They don't even have a Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. Dante Moore's a guy that has thrown for less than 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. And my point in saying all that is, side by side, the numbers between the two programs are nearly identical. But Texas Tech, I think, has a much better defense. Even though I just said Oregon's underrated, I just think Texas Tech is that good to set up a phenomenal Orange Bowl with these two teams.
Yeah, here is in the wake of what happened in the Big 12 championship game, what Kalani Sitake said he learned in the second time around playing Texas Tech.
I mean, the game felt different than the first one. Let's be honest. The first one was really hard. This one, I thought we were competitive and we're in it, and then the turnover started happening towards the end, and then it just got away from us. But we could do a lot of things differently. I like that we were physical. I mean, they couldn't just run the ball up on us inside, so we were physical up front on both sides. I thought they tackled really well and obviously forced some fumbles. I mean, they forced a couple fumbles and had a couple of interceptions, and I think that was the difference in what could happen. I felt like we held it to a 1-score, 2-score game for a while, and then all of a sudden the negative things started to happen, and it just got away from us. But listen, this is a really, really good team. They're the best team in the country. I wish more people would be saying that.
All right, there's Kalani Sitake. I wish more people would be saying that they're the best team in the country, and they might be. And certainly heading into the playoff, they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams. You could argue whether or not Ohio State should be higher than them, but certainly you look at it, the top 4 teams in the country right now, pretty well defined. And I think Texas Tech, my takeaway is they're being slept on. There's no question about it. And here's Louis Riddick from ESPN basically saying the same thing.
No one has better get-off in college football than David Bailey. It's that simple. His first 2 steps, he's gone. He is around the corner and gone. But as you know, look, I know you're talking about Coach Marinelli and the importance of Joey McGuire as far as him putting this all together. But it doesn't work unless you have those guys on the football field and in the locker room who are really the guys who police everything for you on your football team. And look, Jacob Rodriguez, what he's doing right now, I mean, look, think about this. 7 forced fumbles. Are you kidding me? 7 forced fumbles and 4 interceptions as a linebacker. Yeah. There's teams that don't have 7 forced fumbles as a team in an entire season. And when your best players are your best people, and they're the people that everyone rallies around, you have got a perfect mixture. Texas Tech is, I believe, the most dangerous team in this playoff. They're the one that I believe no team wants to see because of their versatility on offense and their versatility on defense. And the love and camaraderie they have, that is a very powerful thing.
That's a great couple of points there by Louis Riddick, and I'm glad they're getting some national attention and love for. They are the most underrated team right now in college football in terms of they can win a national championship. And look, I mean, last year in the dance, Ohio State was the best running team and the best defense. I would say heading into the playoff, the best rushing team and with the best defense is Texas Tech. Hands down. If we're looking for 2 factors of teams that can win national championships, that in recent history we've seen, defense travels. This defense is explosive. And they're being very underestimated. I'm not sure that the rest of the country has any sense of how good Texas Tech really is.
Which is exactly how they want it.
Yep.
It is setting up beautifully for them to make some noise because of that fact right there. And then offensively, they don't make mistakes. Sure, they have to settle for field goals sometimes in the red zone. Sure, they don't get a short 4th down inside the 20-yard line, but they didn't have any turnovers. They had that turnover on downs, and that was it. and they had 159 yards on the ground against a very stout BYU rushing defense. And their running backs are healthy. Their running backs are rested, and they will be by the time the Oregon game rolls around. Cameron Dickey, second in the Big 12 in rushing, finishes the regular season with over 1,000 yards. Jacoby Williams was their leading rusher on Saturday against BYU. He goes for 80. Their tight end, Terrence Carter, is extremely underrated. Reggie Virgil and I think Douglas, the receiver, the transfer from Florida last year, who's in his second year at Texas Tech.
Caleb Douglas.
Caleb,
Yeah.
thank you. I think he's their most underrated weapon. He only had 23 yards. He only caught one pass against BYU, but he's a big NFL prototypical bodied receiver that can stretch the field. So they do enough offensively. They are very Ohio State-like from last year, or Notre Dame, who got to the national championship. And there are other teams in the college football playoff that I think play a similar style that lean on their defense. I look at Ohio State and Indiana. So those games are toss-ups to me, but I think Texas Tech is in a position to, yes, play for and maybe win a national championship because of their depth, because of their defensive line and their pass rush. And really they have seen what Ohio State did. They saw a hole in the market with NIL and transfer portal and an opportunity for Cody Campbell to step in, and they have thrived this season and built this team around winning not just a Big 12 championship, but a national championship.
Wow. James Westling, Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. All right, coming up next, we get you caught up on everything that happened on the hardwood this weekend. That includes volleyball plus TCU exits in the Final Four. That's all coming up next. This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Sama lined up to the
This is Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12 Conference. Tune in. And Big 12 Studios, big12studios.com, the full details on how you can find us. Also, if you miss any parts of the show, including our great interviews, we had John Stiegelmeier, the South Dakota State head football coach, who coached both as the head coach of, as a player, and worked with when he was an assistant at South Dakota State under John Stiegelmeier. It's Jimmy Rogers, the new Iowa State football coach. So some great insight into what Iowa State fans in the Big 12 should expect with Jimmy Rogers taking over now as Iowa State. Plus, we'll hear what Colin Klein had to say at his introductory press conference for K-State. It's all coming up. Tough weekend in the Big 12 on the hardwood, and we'll explain in a moment. But TCU falls to Florida State in the Final Four, their first ever Final Four appearance. They lose 1-0. Really tough in that semifinal matchup, but great season for TCU women's soccer. And then in volleyball, 10 teams entered, James. Only 2 teams remain. So 8 teams eliminated after the first weekend of the volleyball tournament. But Kansas still standing. They head to the Sweet 16. Kansas will take on Nebraska, who's a heavy favorite to win the whole thing. And then Arizona State also advancing as they will take on Creighton to move forward. But Iowa State, TCU, Colorado, K-State, Arizona, Baylor all lose in the round of 32. And BYU lost to Cal Poly. Utah lost to Northern Iowa in the first round of the volleyball tournament this weekend.
Yeah, and on Saturday, all the higher seeds won. We were hoping that a Big 12 team could maybe push through and pull off an upset. Nebraska seems to be on this Big 8 revenge tour, taking down Kansas State and now getting ready for Kansas. But all in all, I think the Big 12, anything that they did in the postseason, volleyball was going to be gravy after you set a Big 12 record with how many teams just got in the field.
All right, why don't we go through the Big 12 basketball weekend that was, because there's a lot to react to from this. And let's start with the good, James, because we saw games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the good was mostly on Saturday. Let's start with Iowa State 81, Purdue 58. This is the largest home loss ever by an AP number one overall, and is the largest non-conference home loss by a number one in AP poll history. It actually tied the largest margin that a AP number one has ever lost by at home, and it's the largest non-conference home loss by an AP number one in history. So a historic game. It also was the first non-conference home loss for Purdue since 2019. 36 straight home non-conference victories for Purdue. Iowa State just destroyed them. Purdue actually led 31-29 late in the first half, and then an avalanche in the second half is what engulfed the Boilermakers at home. The Cyclones opened the second half on a 13-2 run, and Purdue never got it back under double digits.
And you're seeing highlights on the video side on Big 12 Studios, and you noted this. This was not a neutral floor. This was not a neutral game played in Indianapolis. Like, this was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Purdue's home court, and Iowa State blitzed them. Yes, it was close at halftime. Then
West Lafayette, not Fort Wayne.
Sorry, West Lafayette. Thank you. Iowa State had that 13-2 extended run. There was an 11-0 burst during that same spurt to go up by 15 and never looked back. They hit 11 threes in the game, shot 59% in the second half. Taman Lipsy was back, but they've got a freshman, Kylian Touré, who's from France. He was a high 3-star, low 4-star, rated as like number 123 according to Rivals.com. And he is a baller.
Yeah.
Kelvin Sampson was telling me that kid is unguardable. Like, people have no idea how good this kid is. He thinks he's their best player. He had 13 points, and then Blake Buchanan, somebody they got in the portal, 12 points and 9 rebounds, with Momcilovic, who had 20 points. He's been a walking bucket. Joshua Jefferson, so dynamic, and then Lipsy running the show. They also have Heisey coming off the bench, who was a huge glue guy for them last year. Like, they ran Purdue out of their own gym. It was super impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. Easily the best win of the weekend. Iowa State now 9-0, and we'll see when the AP Top 25 is released how high they're going to be in the poll with this win. I will say they're probably not going to be higher than Arizona, though. Arizona absolutely destroyed Auburn on Saturday, 97-68. 2 words: bully ball. Arizona outscored Auburn 60-24 in the paint. And honestly, the margin is incredible, but 60 points in the paint. Arizona almost outscored Auburn in the paint alone. When you think about Auburn had 68 total points and Arizona had 60 paint points in this game. Arizona shot 61% overall, 64% in the second half. But it makes sense that they shot a 61% clip because they had 60 points in the paint. Just insanity.
Koa Pete had 18. Jaden Bradlin had 16. They had won their first 3 games against ranked teams away from Tucson. This one was at home, and they made another statement to just destroy Auburn in the way that they did. They were up by a dozen at halftime, shooting 61% from the floor. I mean, when all your points are at the rim, you shoot a much higher clip. Tashawn Pettiford tried to keep Auburn in it. He had 30 of their 68. But Arizona just defensively turned it up, and they've got this high-low game really working with Koa Pete, and then they're cutting to the basket from the baseline. Jaden Bradley, with his physicality at the point, can get anywhere he wants on the floor, and they're winning. It's almost like they've found a hole in the marketplace, and it is scoring at the rim. All these teams want to dance outside and shoot threes and play this NBA style, and meanwhile, Arizona's just old school in the way that they're winning these basketball games.
Yeah, no, well said. Also on Saturday, Houston 82, Florida State 67. You called this game. Kingston Flemings had 8 steals in this game. 8. Here's how it sounded by the play-by-play guy. Is it James Wessling who was on the call for this one? Let's take a listen.
6'4", 190.
And his touch around the rim, being able to knock those shoulders down.
Quick hands from Flemings. The Cougars. Flemings. Coach, young guy, I have to earn their respect. Flemings, this could be showtime. Look out.
His body control is so good.
Using a clean look.
Right there.
10 to shoot. Walker. Flemings. A long two. He's a 6'8" wing with a 7'3" NBA wingspan. Rising. Flemings. Quick trigger. He got it. Flemings. A hop step with the left.
Listen, I mean, we're in a day and age where we don't see too many coaches 35.
Flemings one-on-one gets into the lanes. Florida State heating up. Sharp, his counter.
All right, so it sounded great on the call. James, your thoughts on this big win for Houston?
Houston's really good, and Kingston Flemings is lottery-level talent. The 8 steals, the 21 points, he's super efficient, also had 5 assists. And I was intrigued by how he would bounce back after he was held to just 1 point and bothered by foul trouble last time out in Houston's win over Notre Dame. He responded in a big way. Chris Sinak is a post problem for teams because he's got this 6'11" frame, 7'4" wingspan, and he can shoot it. I mean, they get him the ball around the elbow, and he's knocking down jumper after jumper. 15 points, 10 rebounds. Emmanuel Sharp finishes with a quiet 27. That's all he does is get buckets. Milos Uzan didn't have a great game shooting the basketball, but he was the catalyst. And Florida State plays a very BYU-like style. They're very NBA, very analytics-driven. They shoot a lot of threes, lead the nation in three-point field goal attempts, and Houston was no match for them.
Friday, we had a couple of tough losses for the Big 12. On Sunday, though, we had some really lopsided victories for the Big 12, including Kansas beating Missouri 80-60. Kansas got boat raced by Missouri last year in this game. They returned the favor this time at T-Mobile in Kansas City. Darren Peterson did return. It was funny, James, because before the game, Bill Self mentioned that he came down with a bug that had been going throughout the locker room, which was hilarious, considering all the noise around Darren Peterson. But he played well in his return. Dropped 17 points. Did not have to play much in the second half because Kansas, this game was close in the first half. Kansas erupted with a 23-3 run, basically that spanned halftime all the way through the mid-second half and kind of pulled away. Missouri shot just 34% overall and 7 for 27 from 3. So Kansas's defense really disrupted what Missouri was trying to do. And Trey White with 20 and 13 in this game.
Yeah, Trey White was fantastic. And Darren Peterson, do we dare call this the flu game then for Darren Peterson?
We dare not.
We dare not. We dare not. Okay. 23 minutes, that's a good thing. 17 points, he was super efficient. But also he opened things up for Trey White, who continues to get better. 20 points on 9 shots for Trey White. He drew a ton of fouls.
Yep.
I also really like Bryson Tiller in his game and
agreed
how he's starting to come along. They've got the high-low with him and Flory Badunga. Kansas has weathered the storm. Like, they've weathered the storm. To be 7-3 with all those games that Peterson missed, they don't have a bad loss on their resume. They've got some quad 1 wins. I think Kansas is kind of a dark horse contender in this Big 12 in terms of the top 4 and the powers that be.
Yeah, no, well said. And look, here's what Bill Self said about Darren Peterson.
I think I think it frustrates him. You know, it's the world we live in today's time, though. It's BS, though. That kid's over there getting 4 treatments a day for 45 minutes every treatment. That kid spends more time shooting on his own than anybody else, maybe that I've ever coached. That kid wants to be out there so bad, and then whenever I say whatever I'm going to say, you know, it's not enough for me to say it's day to day, which that's what it's been, day to day. You know, so there's always, you know, a reason why somebody can say something negative. You know, if he had a compound fracture, nobody would say anything because you can see it. This you can't see. And unfortunately, it wasn't bad enough that it was to keep him totally out because he did practice, but it wasn't good enough that he could play the way he needs to play. So
there you go. You satiated there, James. You have your pound of flesh now. Bill Self was talking directly to you, James. What do you have to say for yourself?
Yes. I was going to ask you how you felt about that response. I actually, dare we say, was Bill Self telling the truth all along? And there isn't this conspiracy that he's a number 1 NBA draft pick and they're holding him out. And maybe he did actually just have a grade 1 hamstring tear that they were concerned would turn into a grade 2. And so they were resting him and he wasn't 100% full go. But now he is, and he balled out on Sunday.
Yeah. Look, the thing is, all's well that ends well, right? So this season's yet to play out. You know, obviously there's concern about, you know, his availability moving forward. We'll see how it's impacted. They've got now a week. I mean, he basically spent the majority of the second half on the bench getting massaged for a different injury that wasn't a hamstring injury. They don't play again until next weekend when they play NC State. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, you know, Self, it's a tough dynamic because it's clear that like he's making decisions in the best interest of Darren Peterson. Obviously, Darren Peterson's making decisions in the best interest of himself. So, you know, it's just a different cat, and he's a really good player, obviously. And Kansas, I think Kansas fans are upset because they realize how good this team can be with him on the floor, and it's good to get Trey White some confidence to build him up with playing without him because, you know, the Trey White we saw with Darren Peterson earlier this season is better now that he's had time to kind of be the guy on the team. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we'll see. Like, it's all's well that ends well, right? Like, we'll see how this thing ends. If it ends with Kansas making the tournament, losing the first round with Darren Peterson on the bench, you know, I'm sure Kansas fans will have a lot to say about it, myself included.
Yeah, and that is justified, but I do think that Darren Peterson wants to be on the floor.
Sure.
Like, this is all he knows. We had a sit-down one-on-one with him at the Big 12 Media Days. He's very quiet. He's kind of soft-spoken. He just wants to play basketball. He doesn't care about fashion. He doesn't care about music. He just wants to play basketball. He is a true hooper. And so I think if it was up to him, he would have been out there, and he will be out there the rest of the season. Now, there are team doctors. There is a Hall of Fame basketball coach. There are NBA general managers. There is his team, his family, everybody else around him that are making those decisions for this kid that is still 18 years old. But I don't fault him specifically. I think he wants to play.
All right, coming up next, we've got Taylor McHarg, our Monday morning quarterback, joins us. Plus more on what we saw in the Big 12 championship game. And how about the bowl games? We know which Big 12 bowl games are set. We'll give you those matchups next. This is Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Bowl season is upon us now, James. The college football season is here and gone, and that's the disappointing side. But we get to the juicy games here as we get into the heart of the Christmas and New Year's season. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Radio. We are proudly presented by Modelo here on a Modelo Monday, reacting to the college football weekend that was an incredible weekend full of conference championship games, many of which were blowouts. The Big Ten championship, though, was incredible. The ACC championship, the drama with Duke winning and allowing James Madison a spot, just incredible. But 10 bowl teams out of the Big 12, 2, both with new head coaches, have declined bowl invites, and subsequently the Big 12 has fined those 2 schools $500,000 each. So the rest of the Big 12 going to be the recipients of $1 million handed out by Iowa State and K-State, as both are foregoing their bowl eligibility to not participate in a bowl for this bowl season. James, what are your thoughts there?
You know, the Big 12 had a pretty short, condensed release, and my thoughts are kind of the same. I mean, if you turn down a bowl invitation, there is a penalty that goes beyond just you, the school, and the players and the student athletes, because the Big 12 is tied in to all of these different bowl invitations. There is a pecking order, and if you say no, we're not going to play, it costs the Big 12 and your other conference members, the members of your fraternity, dollars. And so I get it. I understand. I don't understand why K-State and Iowa State fans are so up in arms about this. Well, it's half of the money that we got from playing each other in Ireland. Well, go to your bowl game then.
Right.
Go practice for an extra 3 weeks with or without a coach and go play your bowl game.
Yeah, you're totally right. And look, I mean, it's visibility, extra visibility for the conference. There's branding opportunities. So, I mean, there's a loss of money associated for the conference and therefore the rest of the member institutions with them not going. Why should the rest of the Big 12 suffer monetarily when it's the decision by a select few here? The bowls that did get announced for the Big 12, well, the Pop-Tarts Bowl is going to be a good one, but not as good as it might have been initially. It'll be Georgia Tech and BYU at Camping World Stadium in Orlando on December 27th, 3:30 p.m. on ABC. Initially, it was BYU and Notre Dame would have been a great matchup, but Notre Dame declined their bowl invite. And we'll get more in depth, James, on how dead bowl season is, how much it's changed after we get into each of these bowls. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl should still be a good one from Camping World Stadium in Orlando on December 27th.
Yeah, any bowl game that BYU's playing in is going to be a good one because of the way their fans travel and support that football team. Georgia Tech's also really intriguing. Like, Georgia Tech was in the driver's seat to win the ACC for probably the majority of the season. They cracked the top 10 at one point in time, so that's a fantastic matchup. I love the next one on the docket, the Texas Bowl, December 27th with Houston and LSU. Those 2 schools are just a stone's throw from one another. I know that game's going to mean so much more to the people of Houston because
it's in Houston.
It's in
at
Houston.
NRG, yep.
And it's a big deal for the Cougars to win 9 games this year and play an SEC school with that much pedigree. It reminds me kind of when Kansas State played LSU in the Texas Bowl when Skylar Thompson was the quarterback, and it was a huge springboard. By the way, K-State's offensive coordinator that season was Colin Klein. Their now head coach. It was a huge springboard for the K-State program into that conference championship run.
Yeah, love that Houston gets the Kinders Texas Bowl, a game that is on December 20. It's also on December 27th.
Yeah,
same day as the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Also, TCU gets the Valero Alamo Bowl. That one at the Alamo Dome at 9 o'clock on December 29th against USC. So that's a really good one, and more of a home game to a degree for TCU, going from Fort Worth down to San Antonio. And then how about on the same day, Monday, December 29th, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, Arizona State and Duke. So El Paso, a stone's throw from Tempe, out there in the Sun Bowl Stadium at 2 o'clock on New Year's Eve day, 2 o'clock on CBS. It'll be Duke and Arizona State, the champions of the ACC, against an Arizona State club. We'll see who's available and playing for them in that one. And then also on December 31st, at 3:30 on ESPN, it is the Las Vegas Bowl featuring Nebraska and Utah. So some really good ones there out of the Big 12.
Look, I don't know how it works behind the scenes, if the Big 12 is working in collaboration with these bowls or with the schools, but geographically, this could not have played out better for the league. TCU in the Alamo Bowl here in Texas, and playing against a really quality opponent in USC. And I'm excited for that one because I want to see TCU beat somebody. Beat a team that recruits at a high level like TCU does. And TCU has had flashes this season where they look like a team that could contend for a Big 12 championship next season with who they're going to have coming back. I love that matchup. I also love Utah being in Vegas against Nebraska. And then that Sun Bowl, Arizona State against a Duke team that just lit the world on fire with their ACC championship win. You get the ACC champion against last year's defending Big 12 champion in that Sun Bowl. That's a really low-key bowl game that I'm excited about, too.
Yeah, no, and then the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, Navy in Cincinnati. So that one is on January 2nd, and that's a good one for Cincinnati. And then the Trust and Will Holiday Bowl featuring Arizona and SMU in San Diego. That one is on January 2nd at 8 o'clock on Fox, so another good one as well. And I'll tell you, from a non-Big 12 perspective, the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, which is played at TCU's home stadium, Amon G. Carter, Rice and Texas State, so some great Texas connections there. We'll ask Taylor McHarg about that, but a really good bowl game there as well from a local perspective outside of the Big 12.
Yeah, and that's the bowl game that Kansas State and Iowa State turned down. One of them would have been playing Texas State in that bowl game. Instead, it's a tremendous opportunity for a 5-7 Rice team that has a first-year head coach in Scott Abel. But the Liberty Bowl for Cincinnati, that will be the effort bowl, because you're playing a Navy team that runs a service academy triple option offense,
right?
And Navy is vastly underrated. They are a problem for a lot of teams. So what will we see from Cincinnati, who has more talent and athletic ability than that Navy team? But if they're not dialed in, they'll lose that game. And then the Holiday Bowl, SMU and Arizona, another really intriguing matchup with SMU, last year's ACC champion, or getting to the championship, I should say, regular season champion, to take on an Arizona team that has to be really excited about the season that they've had out there in San Diego. Super pumped for that one as well.
Yeah, well said. All right, then, of course, we know the college football playoff. It's Texas Tech playing against the winner of the Oregon James Madison game, a game you figure will be won by Oregon as it's a home game. So it could potentially be Oregon against Texas Tech on January 1st from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. That game is slated for noon on January 1st. It is the first of 3 games, quarterfinal games that day. But the college football playoff will start the week of December 19th. So in 11 days, we get Friday, December 19th. So a week from Friday, we get Oklahoma and Alabama. Alabama already lost at home to Oklahoma. Now Oklahoma gets to host them. Saturday, December 20th, it's Miami and A&M. Then the winner of that game gets the Cotton Bowl. So if you remember, Ohio State beat Texas in the semifinals at the Cotton Bowl last year. Now they could potentially have another home, road game against a Texas A&M club playing at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Ole Miss and Tulane. That's a rematch from a game earlier this season that Ole Miss won by a lot. They're hosting again Tulane in that game, so we'll see if Tulane can keep this one closer. And then Oregon and James Madison, those games all on December 20th. So the 19th and 20th will set in motion who will play in the final or in the quarterfinal matchups against Indiana. Indiana gets the winner of the Alabama-Oklahoma game. Ohio State gets the winner of that A&M Miami game. The winner of the Ole Miss Tulane game gets Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, which Ole Miss Georgia will be fantastic in the Sugar Bowl. And then Oregon JMU, the winner of that game, gets Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl.
Do we see any upsets in the opening round? Remember last year, having the game at home was a huge advantage. The crowds were electric. It was must-see TV.
I could see potentially Miami going into College Station and getting a win. And maybe Tulane.
Tulane is the one that I have my eye on. I mean, that is an Ole Miss team without their coach. That is a Tulane team that their coach is on the way out, but, man, they play hard for John Sumrall. Veteran quarterback in Jake Retzloff. Really good Tulane defense. And then Alabama. Can Oklahoma continue to own Alabama? I mean, that has become the weirdest lopsided rivalry that nobody saw coming, is Oklahoma having Alabama's number.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. And, it's funny because with Oklahoma, it's like, we beat Alabama this year already, and that's a big reason why we should be in the playoff. in Tuscaloosa. All right, your prize is you get to host Alabama
Get
now.
them in the first round. I think we'll see at least one road team win. Wouldn't shock me to see two.
By the way, did we see that last year? Did all home teams win last year?
Notre Dame beat Indiana. Penn State beat Boise State. Ohio State throttled Tennessee.
And Texas beat...
Who was the other?
Texas.
Texas beat Clemson.
So all the home teams won.
All the home teams won.
Yep. I'll say at least one home team is going to go down this year. At least one is going to go down this year.
Agreed.
Which first-round matchup are you most looking forward to in the college football playoff?
Ooh, first-round matchup? I mean, we just talked about Tulane and Ole Miss. That one's more just that fan in me wants to see if the little guy can hang with the big guy and all the Lane Kiffin drama. But I think from an X's and O's, like on the field, I want to see Texas A&M Miami. I think Miami's better than people think. I know that they play in the ACC, and they were very much on the bubble to get in this field. But Texas A&M with Colin Klein set to be the head coach at Kansas State, maybe that's a little bit of a distraction. I've only seen Texas A&M a couple of times. Early in the year, I saw them against UTSA, and then I saw them lose to Texas, and I watched them almost lose to South Carolina. I think they've been kind of skating on upsets, and so I think that Miami has the best chance to go in there to College Station and kind of spoil their season, which is why that one's probably most intriguing for me.
Well, and Tulane Ole Miss is I love that matchup because it's such a regional game.
Yep.
You've got, Tulane in New Orleans making a playoff before LSU has made a college football playoff. Think about that. And they've got a coach, John Summerall, who's about to leave to go to Florida, and they're playing for the right to get to the Sugar Bowl, the granddaddy of all of SEC bowl games against Georgia. So, I mean, you think about, Tulane, here's your shot to prove you're worth being in the SEC. You get an SEC matchup on the road against Ole Miss. If you win, you get Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, down the road from where you play, virtually a home game for you. That is so intriguing to me. And again, they already lost to Ole Miss this year, got smoked at Ole Miss. So can they keep it closer? And then, of course, there's the subplot of Jake Retzloff, the former BYU quarterback. Can he go in and beat an Ole Miss team that's not going to have its head coach? Should be really intriguing. And I think, look at the opening score, and then look at the fact that they're not going to have Lane Kiffin on that sideline. How much of a difference would he make in this game? So I think Tulane Ole Miss is the one I'm most looking forward to. And then, here's one of those, Oklahoma, Alabama, this Oklahoma, this is what you signed up for. You signed up for the SEC. You signed up to play Alabama. You beat them already. You've beaten them twice now. Oklahoma is 2-0 since joining the SEC against Alabama. How about that?
Yeah.
Now you got to go 3-0 to advance.
I mean, Oklahoma had to beat Alabama to make a bowl game last season.
Yeah.
And they
did
beat them soundly.
And probably knocked them out of the college football playoff last year.
Mm-hmm. Miami, Texas A&M, I'm talking myself into Miami. They just beat Pitt, by the way, 38-7 on the final regular season Saturday. They have a win against Notre Dame. They killed Florida in the non-conference. They beat Florida State when Florida State was still Florida State that we thought they would be early in the season. Their losses are at SMU in overtime, a game that had a questionable call towards the tail end of regulation when Miami had a lead that set up an SMU field goal to even get that game into overtime. And then they lost to Louisville. Louisville's not a bad team. And it's really hard to go undefeated in college football. And looking at their body of work, I do think they're a team that they're probably the most likely, I would say, to go on the road and get a win.
All right, that's James Westling. I am Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Our Monday morning quarterback, Taylor McHargue, joins us next. He was with me on Saturday, and he'll join us coming up next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Radio. This is Big 12 Today. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios with James Westling on social at James Westling. I am Ari Temkin on social at Ari Sports. Every Monday during the football season, we have our Monday morning quarterback, Taylor McHarg, join us. And Taylor did a fantastic job with us on Saturday hosting our pregame show, the Big 12 Championship pregame show on the field. And Taylor, I mean, we've got to applaud ourselves for the incredible work we did. I mean, there's no heart surgeon or brain surgeon on earth that had to do harder work than what we did on Saturday, Taylor. Standing for 2 hours, no computers, no laptops, just us and our brains. How about that?
Hey, I thought, you're operating off the phone. We've got Will back there giving us the cues and signals. Man, we rocked it. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was a blast, and we got to visit with Kalani. Just give me your thoughts on the game overall.
Just that it looked so much like the first matchup, and we talked so much before the game about how I think we both expected BYU to be a little more effective on offense, and you just kept waiting. It was almost like there was the dam finally broke early part of the fourth quarter where BYU, they have that first drive of the game that's scripted. They drive right down the field, boom, touchdown. And we're looking at each other like, man, I think this may be a much more competitive game. We'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden, all of the momentum that they created on that first drive is squashed. And Texas Tech did to BYU what they've done to everybody else and what they had done to BYU in the first matchup. Squeeze you from the inside out with their pressure, and linebacking play was unbelievable again. And what stood out to me most, I stood right behind the Tech bench for the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, when all of those turnovers were created, Tech was not blitzing very much. They really were just getting after the quarterback with 4 and allowing those unbelievable linebackers to play zone coverage, keep their eyes on the quarterback. And if you can do that and you can make the quarterback move Bear Bachmeier off his spot, you're going to be really difficult to beat. And so it just another example of playing incredible defense. I think this is one of the top 3 defenses in the country. And we talked about this off air. I think they got a great matchup. We expect that it'll be Oregon that they'll play in the Orange Bowl, and I would take Tech in that game.
Yeah, Taylor, being there in person, is there anything that you noticed about Texas Tech that maybe you didn't know before going into the game?
When I say a quiet confidence, there was plenty of energy on the sidelines. I don't want it to sound like there wasn't energy, but this was not a front-running kind of group. There was, even after the first drive of the game, they came back to the bench, they're getting coached up, zero panic, zero frustration, and all game, it just looked like a very mature football team that's got a ton of confidence in themselves. They know what they are. They after a big play, for example, they're not jumping up in the face of people and jawing and getting crazy penalties. It's just a very clean, disciplined, focused team. And I think the other thing that stood out to me on the defensive side is they just don't miss tackles. BYU's game plan was very clear. Get it out of Bear Bachmeier's hands quickly. There was a lot of underneath completions, a lot of whether it's screen game or underneath quick game, hitch routes, slants. And early part of the game, Tech was fine to give those up. But there was almost no yards after catch. They were rallying and making the tackle immediately. And it just goes back to Ari, and I talked about it so much of the pregame. This is not a team that you want to have 10, 15 play drives because you can't do it. It's too difficult. And that's exactly what happened to BYU's offense.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny because we said on the pregame, they're not going to turn the ball over 3 times. They'll run the ball better. And we were right. They turned it over 4 times. But they did not run the ball better. And I mean, it felt like, Bear had some throws that he was going to make, and Ben Roberts just came out of nowhere to make some impressive defensive individual plays. And, that I think when you got a true freshman that's reeling a little bit from he's not seeing the field the way that he needs to see it, it's one of those things where it was Texas Tech's defense just caused Bear to play like a freshman. And he only did it twice this year, but he did it both against Tech.
And that the mistakes I thought in the fourth quarter, some of that was a product of BYU realizing they're running out of time, literally, and that you got to start forcing these throws because, for the first 3 quarters, it's still a 1 or a 2 score game, even late in the third quarter.
Right.
And so they're it was like they were waiting on, okay, are we going to create a play on special teams? We're going to create a play on defense. Let's not do anything on offense that gets us beat. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's like, okay, well, we got to go now. We got to figure this out. We got to hit some shot plays. And they start to, a couple attempts. They take a shot to Kingston up the outside. Ends up being a PI call, but they started to try to create some of those plays. Roberts, like you talked about, the interception that he created in the middle of the field is a great example of he's got his eyes back on the quarterback and he's read and react off of what the quarterback's doing and just goes and makes a play. And you're able to do that when you have total trust in your defensive line that we could just rush for and they're going to get home more times than not.
Taylor McCarg, Monday morning quarterback, was on site for the Big 12 championship game, part of our coverage, and by us, I mean Artie and Taylor, the pregame show ramping up to kickoff. Taylor, during the break, you were telling us your thoughts on teams opting out of bowl games. Like it used to be that players would opt out of bowl games. Well, now we have entire teams, some in the Big 12 and then Notre Dame. What's your take?
I hate it. I hate that in Notre Dame has every right and should be incredibly upset with how this played out for them. And I know that's a very different situation for them than it is with Kansas State and Iowa State. But overall, for the sport, it's not healthy. It's not great. Bowl games should matter. When my last season was 2013, so it was a while ago, but it wasn't so long ago that the bowl structure was that much different than it is now. And those are some of my favorite memories as a player. And I would say from a player's perspective, nobody should be opting out of games unless you are a top 1 or 2 round kind of pick, because you don't get many opportunities. And when the games are over, it's over. And I promise you, there are guys that voted on all of these teams that said, you know what, I'll raise my hand and say I don't want to participate in a bowl game, that will regret that, because again, you don't have that many opportunities. And the bowl games, it's not just the game, it's not just the week. Your bowl prep, most of the people on campus have left. It's an opportunity for you for the last month of the year, of the semester, to be around your teammates and practice and get better and then go travel somewhere for a week. It's very different than any other game. And I think it's a mistake for these schools to even allow the option for these kids not to play the game, because I think we're losing sight of what's the point of all this. These are college football players. They're supposed to play college football. What is the point in all this if we're just not going to play our bowl games and fulfill our obligations? That also the conference, you saw the fines that they levied against Kansas State and Iowa State. I think and I understand this is a Big 12 show, but for Notre Dame, I think there should be a postseason ban for what they did. And they have every right to be upset. But I think it's ridiculous to take your ball and go home and just say, we're done. We're not going to fulfill our obligation to go play in a bowl game somewhere.
And especially because, it's not like you have a coaching changeover. And at the end of the year, it came down to BYU and Notre Dame. There was a great argument to be made. So, it was setting up for a fantastic matchup at the Pop-Tarts Bowl that, would have done a great rating. It's super disappointing from that regard. Go prove it. Go prove you were better than BYU. Because we heard, through the media that you were the better program with the better resume. Go prove it.
And that if you are they're one of the premier brands in the sport. Any way you slice it, they're a top 5 brand. And they would make the argument they are the premier brand in the sport. You can't behave like this. Georgia didn't when they were left out. Florida State didn't when they were left out. And they went and took it on the chin in a big way. And it was embarrassing for Florida State, but they showed up and they played. It happens all the time, especially, and I'll pivot back to the Kansas State and Iowa State. I understand completely that you've got a coaching change. You have guys that have entered the portal. You have guys that have gone home for the last 2 weeks, and trying to get them back on campus and get rallied and implement a game plan and then get on the road. I get that it's disruptive. So what? You're there to play football. You're not there to end the season early and get on the road to start recruiting. I think we're losing sight of the point here. And I hate, just at a macro level, that this is what's happened to bowl games at the highest level, because I know for G5 programs, the bowl games are still, they matter tremendously. But you could also look at how many 5 and 7 teams they had to call before they finally found somebody that would go play.
Right.
Yep. Well said. How do you feel, Taylor, about some of the other bowl matchups for the Big 12, like a BYU and Georgia Tech, a TCU and USC, Arizona State and Duke, Houston, LSU? There's several others that I'm not including here, but the teams that are playing in bowls, which of these matchups stand out?
Yeah, the last two that you just mentioned, I thought TCU got a great draw. I think this is a great opportunity for them against a USC team that they had an outside shot at the college football playoff in, the middle of November, and TCU, I think, was better than their record. I think Houston's got a great opportunity. I think, Joseph Duarte, who covers them for the Houston Chronicle, had an interesting post about, Houston. The better bowl game that they would have qualified for was the Alamo Bowl, but the perception was Houston doesn't travel as well. And so I think it's great for Houston fans that if that's the case, you're keeping it with the Texas Bowl in NRG Stadium. And so hopefully against LSU, there's all sorts of regional ties there. That should be a good environment. And with where LSU stands right now, I think that should be a game that Houston's got a great shot at picking up a win against an LSU team that's not nearly as good now as they were back in September.
Yeah, well said. Taylor, just, as we kind of wrap bow around this Big 12 season, we came into the season talking to you about this being the year of the quarterback, and I'm not sure that it lived up to that, but this was certainly a good offensive year. Like, what are some of your highlights in terms of players or plays or moments?
I think a guy that when it was all said and done, I was probably most proud of and I don't know him, I have no personal relationship with him, but Noah Fafita and what Arizona did this year. That was a team that, Vegas had them at 4.5 wins coming into the season. I mean, we're talking about, is this going to be are you going to have a coaching change after 2 seasons? And all of a sudden they end up with a 9-3 regular season. And I thought Noah Fafita was solid all season for Arizona.
Yeah.
I thought it was, Houston in the same vein. I thought it was very impressive what they did, in the way that they rebounded from a year ago, and Connor Wegman and sort of the resurgence of his career. And then Texas Tech, I think, we'll look back on this season and the Big 12 championship. I think it was a disservice to BYU to be an 11-1 team and be on the outside looking in. But it was the way that they lost twice to Texas Tech that, the Big 12 and the ACC right now are going to continue to battle the perception of your at-large spots up against SEC and Big 10 teams. And I thought BYU should have been in the playoff, but they did not. Ari, we talked about it in the show. They needed that loss to be close, and it wasn't. And the way that they got dominated and could not move the ball on the offensive side. The thing that I'm interested to see play out is how does that Tech defense look throughout the run of this playoff stretch? Because if they end up making it to the Final Four or, the national championship and they're smothering teams on the defensive side, I think we're going to look back and be like, man, we deserve to give BYU their flowers a little more than we did, because I do think there's some brand bias that people are so used to seeing Texas Tech as just an offensive team that I think a lot of people are going to wake up and realize this really is a top 3 defense in the country when it's all said and done.
Yeah, well said. Taylor McHargue, Taylor, you're the best. Thank you so much for taking time to join us each and every Monday, and we've enjoyed having you, and of course we'll talk with you throughout the offseason. Thanks, Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. It's been a fun season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Taylor McHargue, our Monday morning quarterback, the former Rice quarterback, joining us each and every Monday. And, of course, he was my co-host on the field at the Big 12 Championship for the pregame show. James Wesley, Ari Tepkin, this is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. All right, we've talked so much today, whether it be the playoff, whether it be the bowl season, whether it be the Big 12 Championship, basketball, volleyball, soccer. We'll wrap a bow around it next to the final whistle with James Amari. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But what about for Otzelberger on the men's side?
Yeah, no, that'd be good too. Yeah.
I tried him last week, but never heard. But I can try.
Got it. I didn't know if he's.
Samson though.
Yeah.
Todd Boyle, Colorado's off to a good start.
They lost this weekend though.
Yeah, they lost. Screw them.
It's true.
I mean, Texas Tech, Arizona State.
Steve Lutz would probably come on. He's usually pretty entertaining.
He's Arizona.
He's
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I'll try him.
K-State basketball after 9 games under Jerome Tang. His first year 8-1, second year 7-2, last year 6-3, this year 5-4.
What's Kelvin Sampson and dogs?
His story about why he's obsessed with these little dogs.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. You got that.
Like the players are dogs?
No.
It's fun to hang out with you every weekday morning, 7 to 10 a.m. Central, right here on Big 12 Radio, which you can find on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Download the TuneIn app and get to listening today. Plus, Big12Studios.com is where you can stream us. All of the platforms were available. And if you missed any of our interviews, you can always check them out wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other podcast platforms, including I would highly recommend going to check out our interview that we did earlier today with John Stiegelmeier, the former South Dakota State head coach who stepped down after winning a national championship in 2022 to hand the reins over to his former assistant and former linebacker, Jimmy Rogers, who now takes over as the head football coach at Iowa State. So you're not going to want to miss that conversation. James, as we kind of talk through the big picture takeaways from this weekend, what stands out to you? What was big picture takeaway from this weekend, whether it was football, volleyball, soccer, basketball, whatever?
Well, I would say big picture, the headline would be Texas Tech and just how elite they are, and that they are a national championship contender. They won the Big 12 championship, and the way they won that game, if you had any doubts about them being a true player in the college football playoff, I think those were put to bed. I mean, this is a team that can hang with anybody. So that would be number one. Number two is that Big 12 basketball just continues to pile up marquee quad one non-conference wins collectively across the board. Arizona State picked up a really nice win the other night. I know Colorado just suffered their first loss, but they have quality wins. And then the teams at the top like Houston dominating Florida State, Iowa State going on the road the way that they beat Purdue, your Kansas Jayhawks and the return of Darren Peterson, Arizona a 30-burger against an Auburn team that was ranked number one in the polls last year. I more than anybody else in the country. Those would be my big overarching headlines.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there were some tough losses in the Big 12. I mean, my goodness, your K-State Wildcats, who were scorching to start, have now hit a roadblock in terms of their offense. They lose to Seton Hall. They lost to a good Seton Hall team, but what is this, 4 straight now losses for them? They're 5-4 on the season now.
They're 5-4, and Jerome Tang, his first year in Manhattan, they were 8-1 through 9 games. His second year, they were 8-2. His third year, they were 6-3, and this year they're 5-4 through 9 games.
How about that?
Worst start of the Jerome Tang 4-year era at Kansas State. With the nation's leading scorer, at least going into the weekend, P.J. Haggerty.
How about that? Also, in the Crosstown Classic between Xavier and Cincinnati, Xavier gets another win, 79-74. But Baba Miller, man, he had 17 rebounds for Cincinnati in that game. Dude is a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of dogs, what's your Kelvin Sampson dog story?
Yeah, and I apologize to Anthony Smith, our producer on the Big 12 Studios side, because I forgot that I still had all these pictures in my phone of Kelvin Sampson's dogs, and I have dozens of them. And every time we talk to Houston coach Kelvin Sampson, he's always talking about these little dogs. Remember, it came up at Media Days like 2 years ago.
Well, and it came up this year at Media Days because they had dogs from the Kansas City, the Kansas City dog
adoption agency shelter.
Shelter. That's the word I was looking for.
Dog shelter.
So he was doing the interview with the little dog attached to him. Which gave the perfect segue for him to talk about his little gappy dogs.
Yeah, so he's got these little dogs, and it dates back to, I got the whole story on Saturday from his daughter, who's part of the now Houston basketball staff. And she is going through hundreds of pictures to send me the perfect pictures of these little dogs. And it turns out it goes back to when he was at Oklahoma. So Kelvin Sampson was battling real serious asthma. He was like in and out of the hospital. People don't realize how serious it was behind the scenes. She's like, yeah, we kept it hush-hush, but he was really going through some stuff. And the family heard an old wives' tale that if you got bit by a chihuahua, it would cure your asthma. So they went out and they got him this rescue dog, Chihuahua, who Kelvin Sampson names Fajita because he loves fajitas from his favorite local Mexican restaurant there in Bloomington, Indiana. Turns out the old wives' tale didn't work. The Chihuahua actually was the one that got asthma. It was a whole thing. But Kelvin, yes.
What, did he pass it on like it's like the cold or something?
Kelvin Sampson fell in love with this little dog. And Fajita lived some astronomical number. They had Fajita for 20 years. It was in some like dog world record book. Kelvin Sampson and this little dog Fajita. So ever since, they've taken in these rescue dogs, become obsessed with these little tiny Chihuahuas, and now they've got a couple different mixes. They've got Roxy, which lives with Kelvin Sampson. Lady lives with the sister, or his daughter, I should say. But they're always getting these dogs together, and it's become this huge thing, and it's the 4th year in a row now that the basketball team has actually partnered with the Houston
Humane Society
there, and they go and they do a bunch of community outreach, and Kelvin Sampson, the toughest coach in America, his soft spot are these little tiny dogs.
Right. How about that?
They have everywhere.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And knew that he had some kind of affinity for small dogs because, I mean, if you're around him for, 10, 20 minutes, he talks a lot about his dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, he even mentioned when Houston joined the Big 12, the first media days, he made the illusion of, walking around like with a bunch of like Doberman pinchers. And, he was saying like previously it was like Houston would be around a bunch of like Chihuahuas and, in the American Athletic Conference from basketball. And he's like, now I walk in here and this is got a bunch of Rottweilers and Doberman pinchers. And, so even that metaphor is perfect for him from a dog perspective. So
totally. And he also, remember at Media Days, he was holding a puppy during his 20-minute sit down with us. And he started to relate it to kind of his coaching style because he does rescue dogs only. And the way he coaches, he rescues these kids who maybe were overlooked in the recruiting process, but he sees something in them. He gets them to Houston, and then he develops them into really, really good basketball players.
All right. Some news, it looks like that's coming down, at least Anthony Tatri, who covers Arizona State for PHNX, He says Arizona State quarterback Sam Levitt intends to enter the transfer portal, which obviously should not come as a surprise to any of us, given that there were some reports coming out that he was already out the door. There was a report that came out, I think it was from On3, that basically said, like, he's very unlikely to return to Arizona State. So we'll see where he ends up. But, you know, it's hard to believe that if he does, in fact, enter the portal, that he'll be back at Arizona State. So where would he end up? We shall see. I would imagine somewhere in the SEC. But really tough to see for a kid that came in this year looking like he could lead Arizona State to back-to-back Big 12 championships and then perhaps ride out in the sunset and go to the NFL draft. But it looks like he's going to at least stick around college football for one more year, just probably not at Arizona State.
Yeah, and he's not going out with grace, Sam Levitt at Arizona State. Chris Cartman, who's a Heisman voter and the owner and publisher of Sun Devil Source, who's been on our show plenty, he had the note last night that Sam Levitt was the only captain that did not attend Arizona State's banquet last night. The other captains were all on the stage individually, and when it came time to honor Sam Levitt, Kenny Dillingham actually took the mic and told the audience that he wished him well in whatever his future may hold. It was very short. It was very to the point, but Sam Levitt was not in the house. His teammates were pretty upset about it. The fact that, I mean, this is your year-end banquet, and the portal's not even officially open yet. So, I mean, I think his lack of attendance says a lot about how he feels about his time or his team not being there, man. Like, go to the banquet. Like, hang out with your teammates. That's a big deal.
Even if you are on your way out.
Exactly. Even if you're not going to be there next season, you just don't show up. Like, it just shows in terms of your list of priorities where your teammates stand, and that's sad to see. That's really disappointing.
Yeah, no, it is. And look, I mean, the thing I think to watch for moving forward is this, because Dillingham told us he wants to be at a place where he can win a national championship. And it's clear that Levitt wanted some more money, and Arizona State couldn't make it work because, as we heard, as these reports were starting to surface, it was basically the choice between, 2 to 3 impact players that they could sign for that money or Sam Levitt. And it's obvious what the decision was there. And I'm glad, Dillingham wishes him the best, but I'm sure Dillingham was disappointed to not see him there too.
And what does this mean for Arizona State moving forward? Well, it gives them a lot of cash and capital that would have been invested in Sam Levitt that they can now spend on somebody else, either another quarterback or potentially, it's always the dance of how these teams manage their budget is fascinating to me. Do you give a quarterback $2 to $4 million and hope that he sets the world on fire, or do you take that money and go spend half of it on an edge rusher and the other half on a really good wide receiver like Jordan Tyson maybe, and then you try to get a quarterback that was overlooked somewhat in the portal? So we'll keep an eye on it. C.J. Baxter, the Texas running back, who was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year when they were still in the league back in 2023, he's in the portal, and he's like going all in. He's listing on social media his agent's contact info, like he wants to make it very clear that he's in the portal. Then I also saw an FCS offensive lineman who tweeted himself a snapshot of like his high school profile and claims he's the number 1 offensive lineman in all of FCS in the portal, and that he's the number 8 offensive lineman that's going to be in the portal, but it's him tweeting himself, and there's actually not really a lot of evidence that I can find that would indicate any of that. So the portal season is here.
Finally, we get to the new athletic director at Baylor. We've talked a lot about Jimmy Rogers today, the new head football coach at Iowa State. We've talked a lot about basketball and volleyball and soccer, and Colin Klein being introduced. We'll play audio for you tomorrow on tomorrow's show. But Doug McNamee, the new athletic director at Baylor. James, your thoughts here?
Yeah, pretty split, it would appear, from the fans in terms of how they feel about this, because he doesn't have a lot of sports management background. Now, that's what he got his master's in at Baylor back in 2005, and he was within Baylor's athletics from 2012 to 2017 as kind of an assistant AD for like fundraising, premium tickets, and things like that. But he was on the search committee that hired Matt Rule. He left Baylor around 2018. He moved more into the marketing/business world, and he was kind of the one that constructed Chip and Joanna Gaines' rise into prominence there in Waco in terms of a national pedigree for them. So that's the connection. That's his big push. And I think that he's been very successful in the business landscape. So I think people are kind of poking fun at that they, basically hired the president of Magnolia. But I think the guy has a really high pedigree and will do a really nice job.
Yeah, I mean, he's never left Waco. He's from Waco. He went to Baylor undergrad. He went to Baylor to get his graduate degree. He was within the Baylor athletic department, as you mentioned, working as the associate athletic director and the chief revenue officer. And then, he took over the Magnolia as president, chief revenue officer, chief operating officer of Magnolia, Chip and Joanna Gaines' company. So in 2025, it's about finding people that can find revenue, and that is line one in his career. So I know that there are probably some Baylor people that are wondering, could you go outside Waco to find somebody? But look, I think for somebody that's familiar with Baylor, familiar with Waco, it's the perfect hire for Baylor, considering the number one thing you're looking for from an AD is somebody that generates revenue.
Yeah, these people that are criticizing this haven't been to Waco, haven't seen the Magnolia takeover. And it's not just Waco, it's nationwide.
Right.
Okay? I mean, these guys caught fire on television, sure, on a reality TV show, but look at them now. They've got restaurants in Waco. They've got a whole Magnolia market in Waco.
Right.
Their products are in every Target and Walmart in America. Like, he has taken them to a whole nother level.
Yeah, well said. All right, plenty more to come on this week's shows, so make sure to join us tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks to Will Connerly, who's done an amazing job filling in for producer Taman while Taman's been out on vacation. Thanks to Anthony Smith. I am Ari Tepkin. Thanks to James Westling. Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo. We're back tomorrow, but for now, we are out. Peace.